We have apologies for absence for Mr. Campbell and Mr. Dunn. Members, we have the minutes of July 1st and June 9th. Those were sent out. If there are any corrections, any matters arising, could I have somebody move for the confirmation? Member Stewart, seconded by Member Clark. So we can now invite the UDC in. They fall under the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, so the Permanent Secretary, Ms. Sewell, I understand, is leading the team. Welcome, Member Jackson. You're going to sit beside the member from Central St. James. Well, it depends whether you take it as a pleasure or a punishment. The mark one man. Are you saying that the man is unruly? I think yes. Take it. No, don't scare it. You have a plug beside you. There's a plug on the desk beside you. We'll have no charge. Okay. All right, put it. Is that it? That didn't work, huh? How are you? Yes. Morning, members. Morning. I understand we have representatives from the Ministry of Economic Growth, that's the PS Sewell here, yes, and we have from the UDC, Ms. Pinnock. Welcome all. Well, let me just start, Ms. Sewell, and well, I don't know who's going to lead the proceedings, but what I would ask if you'd like to introduce the team, and then we can ask somebody to take us through the report briefly. We're trying not to be here for too long. So just carry us through the report, and then I'll ask the members, invite the members to give their, to engage. Thank you very much,
Chairman, and good morning to the members of the committee, my colleagues, and from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service, the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and the Urban Development Corporation. With me this morning are the General Manager for UDC, Ms. Heather Pinnock. Accompanying her are Mr. Omar Gray, Deputy General Manager of Finance, Ms. Yvette Sibyl, General Counsel, UDC. And from the Ministry, we have Ms. Constance Trowers, Principal Director, and Ms. Monique Gibbs, Director of Corporate Services, and my name is Audrey Sewell. We are here this morning to respond to questions from the committee, provide clarification where necessary, and We have submitted the report, and so we are available. The UDC will take the lead, and we will provide the necessary support.
All right. Well, Ms. Pinnock, what you can probably do is just give us a abbreviated version, go through the sequence. Were you the general manager at the period of time?
No, I was not.
Were you there?
No, I wasn't at UDC yet.
Oh, so yours is sort of second-hand
Research, yes.
research,
and review
yes.
of the files, yes.
And review of the files. Was any of your team there?
The general counsel would have been. Our general counsel is with us today.
Okay. Okay.
Miss Sybil.
Miss Sibley.
Sybil, yes.
Sybil, sorry, Sybil. All right, thank you. All right, yes. Okay, so, all right, so over to you, Ms. Pinnock.
Okay, I'm going to go through, this is the version that you have, I'm just checking.
Yes.
With the map on the first page?
This.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay, so first I'll talk about the UDC's overall development plan for Ocho Rios. Ocho Rios is an area which UDC has a designated area on the waterfront. We began work from as early as 1967, which is even before UDC was formed. And so we undertook work to dredge the harbor and do reclamation, and there are several designated blocks that reflect the areas developed by UDC. So one of the main areas would have been the beach, the entire Turtle Beach, which is now Ocho Rios Bay Beach. And we did also hotel, shopping complex, and housing schemes around the town center. We have been working as described in this town since the late 60s, and in early 2012, we had started our review of the development blocks in the area. So the map you have here on the first page shows the key development blocks we were looking at implementing from 2012 forward. And what you would see is on that map, they are numbered. The first is the waterfront lands, which is largely being developed through the UDC. It shows both ownership and development authority. So there's some ownership and development by UDC and some by Port Authority because it goes out to the Ocho Rios pair. Then there is 2, which is the market and the transportation center. There is 3, the block that's Artisan Village site. 4, which is Pineapple Place, which has a craft market at this time. 5 is a small parking block, and 6 is Reynolds Pier, which is being developed by PAJ right now. So the property in discussion, which is the property sold to Puerto Caribe Property Limited, those are part of Block 1, the waterfront lands. I'm going forward to the next page. So by agreement of sale executed between the UDC, its subsidiary Montego Beach 1975, and Puerto Caribe Properties, there was an agreement dated November 23rd, 2016, for 2.88 hectares, which is equivalent to about 7.12 acres of land located at Ocho Rios Bay Beach. Again, just to give you an orientation, that would be part of Block 1 on that map on the first page. The consideration, the price, was for $7.2 million US, and this agreement was seen as a way of addressing and financing and fast-tracking UDC's larger development plans for Ocho Rios. Now, just to describe who the partner is Puerto Caribe Properties Limited is a company registered under the laws of Jamaica, and they're the owners and operators of the Moon Palace Jamaica Grand Hotel, which is located on lands adjoining. And they have operated as a member of the Palace Resorts Group, which is headquartered in Mexico. The properties sold included the rooms on the beach hotel, accessways, landscape areas, vacant lands, and beach lands. And there's a number of volume and folios that define the properties that were sold. The property was seen as the sale and the project to grow from that sale was seen as a key strategic investment because it was to bring direct and indirect employment, social investment, as well as open the gateway for economic growth in the tourism sector. The project involved the construction of a 5-star hotel, which is really an extension of the existing Moon Palace 5-star hotel, along one of Jamaica's key tourism belts, and the level of investment is summarized on page 3. That year 1, in terms of projected tax earnings, year 1 would be US 9.2 million, year 2, US 10.1 million, year 3, US 10.9 million. And in the phases of development, the first phase would see an investment value of approximately 225 million US, 2,200 direct jobs in the construction phase, and the retention of at least 600 employees for the long term. Phase 2 saw an investment value of US 270 million, 3,500 direct jobs during that construction phase, and 1,500 direct and 33,000 indirect jobs related to the further operations. As I said before, this proposal would have furthered the UDC's larger Ocho Rios development plan, which started from the development of those beaches and in the introduction of other hotels along the beach, and hotels and commercial activities, and further through the loan and the enhancement of the Ocho Rios Bay Beach, which would include both the portion that was acquired by Puerto Caribe Property Limited and the portion that would remain with the UDC, the remaining public beach. There was also an offer for $15 million US loan for upgrades to the town of Ocho Rios in keeping with the development plans, which is to be reviewed by UDC, Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, and the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. This was not pursued due to feedback received from the Ministry of Finance and the Public Service. PCPL also committed in the form of a grant US $1 million to undertake the upgrading of the public beach and amenities at Ocho Rios Bay Beach. The sale, as was executed in 2016, was subject to the corporation's standard development clause, which required that construction begin and be completed within an agreed time, or the property would revert to UDC at the original purchase price. The developer was also required to seek all of the regulatory approvals from the parish council and NEPA, etc. And the agreement stated that the construction of the additional rooms and facilities would start no later than the 30th of April 2020 and complete implementation by the end of 2023. Towards the end of last year, Puerto Caribe had given verbal indication to the government of their intention to withdraw from this agreement, and the government tried to persuade them to reconsider this decision. However, by way of letter dated March 5th, PCPL wrote me with a decision to confirm its decision to discontinue the investment in the property and return the lands to the UDC. The return of the lands would be in keeping with the special conditions of the agreement of sale, which indicated that if PCPL fails to undertake the development, which is, as described, was to start by the 30th of April, the parcels would be retransferred to the UDC at the same purchase price, and the transfer cost would be borne by PCPL. A question was asked about the implications of the return. So I'm going to address the implications on two levels. The first is development implications. Had the project gone ahead, it would have seen, one, the expansion of the hotel and all of the development benefits as I've already described. It would also have seen an advancing of the overall development plans for Ocho Rios. The returns of the lands means that UDC now has to give consideration to alternate uses and development for those lands, including consideration for making the properties available for investment either en bloc or individually. Also, the financial implications. The properties were acquired in 2016 for US 7.2 million, which was at an exchange rate of 1 US to Jamaican 133, was an amount of Jamaican 957.6 million. And the proceeds of the sale went into UDC's Capital Development Fund, which is an investment portfolio which we keep to activate projects. Although approximately 50% of the money remains in that fund, the indication of their cancellation came after UDC had prepared and submitted its budget for this financial year 2020 to 2021, and as such this expenditure, which is quite significant, just short of $1 billion, was not included in our financial projections for this financial year. And of course we have since had further issues with our financial projections for this year. Returning the funds will affect about $500 million worth of planned projects, specifically the upgrades to the Ocho Rios Bay Beach, which are in design and far advanced, prepared to go to procurement this year. Well, at the time of their decision to withdraw, apart from us already submitting our budgets for this financial year, the town of Ocho Rios was being affected by the downturn in tourism with the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic, which has worsened since the time we had drafted this document. Also, UDC's other income streams have been negatively affected, which would mean that we have reductions all across the board in terms of our management fees and all our other sources of income. And therefore, it would make this a little more difficult to address in this financial year. And other than that, what I have here, which leads to the map on the last page with the colors, is just a breakdown so you can get a clear visual picture of a zoom in on what was block 1 on the first map. So there are other projects. Remember I said that we had looked at a comprehensive plan from 2012 forward. There were other projects that have been developed since. So between 2012 and 2016, works have been completed at the Turtle River Road, the Ocho Rios Cruise Terminal building, the Finger Pier and the parking, as well as the Marina Link Road. And more recently, the work at Ocho Rios Bay Beach Promenade was completed in 2018 at a cost of $135 million. And the phase 1 of the Main Street upgrade was completed last year at a cost of $164 million. So we continue with our planning and design works for other projects in and around Ocho Rios, and we'll look at what we can do with these blocks now that they're not going to be advanced in this way. The Port Authority has been advancing works at the Reynolds Pier block, which is block 6, since 2019, and they opened the Fisherman's Beach, and there's other works happening at the cruise terminal there. So our main project in and around the area that was the lands in question was the upgrade to our existing Ocean Village shopping center, which would look at new opportunities for hotel and commercial on the waterfront and take advantage of its strategic location. So that's the short summary. You want me to go through anything else, or you want to go to questions?
Well, I think before we go, just for clarity, because there's a map on the back of this.
Yes.
You want to just tell us what was being sold?
What you're looking at in the map?
Yes, what was being sold?
Okay, so the area in red pretty much defines the lands that were sold.
Yeah. You want to just tell us what they were?
You mean what you're looking at?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the piece that's a bit square at the bottom. That would be the rooms on the beach property. North of that, you see a piece where you're seeing some trees. That's some vacant land, which would give you the access. And then the beach. You looking at the same map? The red section.
Yes.
So it's a section in red that was sold.
Yes. So it's like 3 lots.
It's more than 3 lots. I had summarized all of the titles that it fell under. It's quite a few titles.
Give us an idea, though, for those of us that know the area. You're talking about what was the public beach?
Yes, there's a section of the beach that is
Right.
highlighted in red.
Yes, but the beach that we know it goes from, there's a promenade there, it passes Fisherman's,
Yes.
um,
Come all the way
point,
around.
comes
So,
round and then normally go into what is a public beach.
so all of this that you see in blue where it says remaining beach is the existing public beach. When you go through the entrance of Ocho Rios Bay Beach now, there is public beach both on the left and right of that entrance. But then when you come to where the hotel, the smaller hotel, rooms on the beach hotel is, that's the beach lands that would have been included in the sale.
Oh, so that's not part of the public beach?
No, it's a section of, you see there part of the
Yes.
red? Yes. So it was public beach before.
It was?
Yes, well, it's still public beach now. Yes.
Oh, it is, all right, so you're selling some of the public beach?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so, well, members, there were some specific Okay, members, are there any questions?
Chairman, are we hearing that the matter is at an end then? That is, contract has now been, the agreement has been cancelled, terminated, monies to be paid back, and we are at square one.
Essentially, they have formally notified us, we have acknowledged, and we are in the process of as I've told you, determining how we schedule those repayments.
This was of repossession of the property. What was the basis why we are now agreeing to take back?
Oh, in the terms of the sale, it did say that if they, right, they indicated.
Sorry, we didn't choose to take it back. The government did not choose to take back the land. They wrote and said that they are no longer interested, so they would want to give us back the land, which is part of the sales agreement, that if they fail to develop the property to start the development by April, I think, 2020, then we had that right to get back the land. But they exercised their right in that clause in the agreement.
Was there still, so the property was empty? No,
Well,
but was there still?
You mean, was there a going concern, was the rooms open?
Yeah.
Rooms was open until March, yes. It closed when all other tourism activities closed. March of 2020.
2020.
Yes.
So, and you're saying that if they did not start,
Yes, that's in the agreement. Wasn't it April 2020?
Yes, April 2020.
That they would return the property.
There was a performance clause, is what you're saying.
A retransfer clause.
Yes.
Yes, but there was also a performance clause.
Yes, that there was a
Yes.
certain
If they did
time.
not start construction by April 2020.
2020.
Yeah.
Yes, but from sometime last year, late last year, I was told that they were considering pulling out of the agreement, but we didn't get anything formal until this year.
why I asked, Chair? Right.
Okay.
You want to?
Well, let me, I think before we go there, let me just complete the process. The reason we're here, in effect, is I think everyone wanted this development to go through. We think it's a good development to have happened. And the actual discussions on it, if just a discussion, is something that should not be a problem. Where it became a problem is that during the process, there were some issues, and the contractor general generated a routine report which showed inconsistencies. And based on that, it became a public discourse, which has caused, in the words of the letter from the persons, from Petrocaribe, they have indicated they're not going to proceed because of the public furor. So we as a committee have a duty to find out what went wrong, to ensure that both yourselves and all interested parties understand something was wrong, so it doesn't happen again, because we don't want us to be losing good development opportunities because things are not done under the right procedure. So I think it's important that you take us through. You had given us another report, and you don't have to go through all the details, and I'd suggest not all the persons named, etc. But you have given us this report. Yes. I think it's important for you to carry us through some of the process that you unearthed, and then we can then determine where the problems arose. So.
Okay, let me take you through the paper of the process. And just to make sure you have a new one, we made an amendment that included some valuations. So I'll just point that out, the change, okay?
Okay.
They didn't get it, okay. All right, so let me go through the process. So the first page takes you through all the titles of land, which I think I already discussed, and then I'll go to the divestment process. So under the policy framework, the government divestment guidelines, where a existing hotel wishes to expand and the only land related is owned by the state, or if the land is required for a strategic investment project that contribute to national economic development, those are conditions in which it can go forward without a public request for proposal. The property, therefore, was not subject to our request for proposal, this transaction. And so it started with doing valuations for the lands under consideration. So the valuations were received in May. 3 valuations were received. The average price, sorry, let me not say the average, the recommended price was $9.3 million US. Based on the three valuations that were received. Then...
please, just for clarity, is that for all the land?
No, as it goes through, you will see that then it was recognized that the beach was not included, and there's a separate valuation for that.
Okay, so this 9.3 million was for a portion of the land?
It would have been all of the land except for the beach.
All right, continue.
And an offer letter was received subsequent to that making an offer of $7 million US to purchase the hotel's lands, lot 6, the garden and the access areas. Then that was August. In September of 2016, the UDC sought valuations for the beach property itself, which was previously rented. And this was, the size of that was approximately 3.7 acres. 2 valuations were received for that. The average sale price would have been $3.55 million US.
That's for the beach?
The beach.
So the total valuation at that point would have been what?
12.8.
12.8 million.
Yes.
That was the total valuation of all. That
would be
the assets.
Yes, for all.
Okay.
In September, UDC received a letter further to the request for the inclusion of the public beach, and the Puerto Caribe increased its offer by $200,000 US, making a total offer of $7.2 million US for the beach and the land, for the land and the beach.
At what point did the beach, so you're saying originally the beach was not part of the land?
The beach was not a part of what was valued for the initial consideration.
So how did it become involved in it?
Well, there were further discussions about the inclusion of the beach in the agreement.
By whom?
between Puerto Caribe and UDC
Okay.
and the government.
Yes?
Who are the officers of UDC that was involved in those discussions that the chairman made reference to?
Who were the officers?
Yes.
Boy, I can say, yeah, we had an acting general manager, and I think the UDC board would have been appointed by then, yes. The new board would have been appointed. So the acting general manager would have been Donald Hamilton.
Mm-hmm.
And yes.
Okay.
And
Can
the
continue.
board
But-
would have been appointed then.
But your timelines on the divestment, you left that out. That's why I'm asking you, based on what you have here.
What you mean? I have the same.
You June the 15th, June the 29th, and August?
I went through those. I said we did the valuation, and then I went down to August when the first offer was received of 7 million. I said that.
You left out June 29th.
Okay. In June 29th, there was a meeting with UDC's exec management team, Minister Darrell Vaz, and UDC, who informed of their intention to acquire the beach area currently leased to them.
That's where it was included.
Yes.
So, are you saying that meeting on June 29th,
2016.
2016, that's when the discussion came about with UDC and Minister Vaz
Yes.
for the beach to be included?
Yes.
Was it during those meetings that the price with the inclusion of the beach was discussed?
I don't have minutes of those meetings, but you will see that in August we received the first offer, which was for 7 million US, and that was for the lands only. And then you will see that in September, UDC sought to get valuations for the beach. So the previous valuations had been for the lands only, and I had already given you that figure. The conversation continued around the beach, and then the beach was valued afterwards separately.
All right, so let me try and clarify this. You're saying that the $7 million that was offered was for the 2 parcels of land
Was for the land.
only. So the valuation that you had of 9.3 million average
Yes.
price, the offer for that was 7 million.
Yes. The hotel lands, lot 6, the garden and the access areas.
And then subsequent to that, UDC was asked to include in it
The beach.
the beach, which was valued at,
3.55 million.
and what was the price offered for that?
The offer of 7 million was increased by 200,000. So the full offer was 7.2 million for the land and the beach, and that came in September.
So, with your permission, Chair, the price, the land without the beach was $7 million. And
That was the offer, yes.
that was the offer that was on the table by the proposed purchaser. A valuation was done by UDC for the beach, and it was 3.5 million.
Yes.
So it's a 3.5 value that you were seeking to realize, and the price that you accepted is in effect 200,000.
Yes.
So you would have given up, you meaning the UDC, would have given up $3.3 million.
3.3, yes.
UDC negotiating at the time with the minister gave up $3.3 million. Huh?
No, you asked if the UDC negotiated with the minister, but I don't know that.
No, yeah, it
I
doesn't
don't
say
know
that.
that was stated anywhere. Yes. And the general counsel is saying that that's not an accurate statement, yes.
I was going back to that June meeting when the beach discussion came on the table.
That's what we...
because it was never there initially. It was only the lands. And in that meeting with the acting general manager at the time, the beach entered. Who entered the beach into the whole deal? Is it the buyers or you offer the beach? They asked for it?
It appears that the
No, I wasn't present at the negotiations, but my understanding was, and it is reflected here, that they had representatives of the UDC being the general manager, the chairman, the architect in charge of Ocho Rios, and somebody else, I can't quite recall now, who met with a team from Puerto Caribe and the attorneys for Puerto Caribe. It is alleged that UDC rejected the first offer, and they countered offer with, because it was $7 million on the table, and they counter offered with the additional $200,000. The management came back and prepared a board paper because they presented it to the board, and the offer was accepted.
no, not accepted. It goes through the process.
It's on.
No, off. Yeah, give off for a second. I'm trying to follow the chronology. You had an offer. They had an offer of $7 million on the table, which never included the beach. And the valuation that you were proceeding on was 12 point. What? No, the 2 parcels of land. Right, that's where I was at. Yeah, 12.8. So you had a valuation of 12.8 for the 2 parcels of land.
No, that's not correct. That's not correct. The land was valued for 9.5.
The 2 parcels?
The land itself, all the parcels for the land, was valued at 9.3 million.
9.3 for the 2 parcels of land.
No, there are a number of parcels of land. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 parcels of land.
Seven.
Look at the table. Table 1
Yeah,
on page 3 of the additional document.
I have an extracted table here. Let me see here one. No, this is internal. Okay, I found it. Anyway, for the benefit of time, the $7.07 million that was offered by Puerto Caribe, it was for lands, different parcels, and that excluded the beach, and that was $7 million. Their initial offer, and your valuation for those parcels of land for which the $7 million offer was for was how much? 9.3. And then you had a meeting in June. What was the date again, Chairman? That June meeting where the beach property came into the picture. June 29th. Yeah. The beach parcel came on the table now. You did a valuation for that parcel and you got 3.5.
I want to clarify that the conversation appeared to have been ongoing from June through August.
Yes.
August was when the first offer was made. The valuation was done in September. The valuation of the beach
Was done in September.
Yes.
by UDC.
Right. And at the end of September now, the offer of 7.2 that was made in August, of 7 that was made in August was increased to 7.2.
0.2, yeah, following.
Okay.
So you had an overall value for both land and beach for 12.8.
Yes.
9.3 and then 3.5. The buyer Puerto Carib came to the table with $7 million for that 9.3 million valued property. At the June 29 meeting, $7 million was on the table.
No, the
Correct?
offer was August 18th. A written offer was received from their attorneys August 18th.
Oh, it came after the August, okay, after the June meeting, the formal offer came in August.
For the 7 million, yes.
For the 7 million.
Yes.
Which of those meetings was Minister Vaz in? Is that the June 29 meeting?
June 29th.
Meeting was an internal meeting at the UDC
You might.
that didn't involve representatives of anywhere else. The June 29 meeting was a management meeting. There was an internal meeting at UDC. There was no offer on the table from anybody at that point in time.
Internal one.
Meeting.
Okay.
Internal meeting.
And that included who? Your GM,
well,
acting GM?
We had the executive management team and Minister Vaz was present at that meeting.
Was that meeting? And when you had that meeting, what was the decision of the management team regarding the 7 million?
The 7 million.
That
Oh,
was-
it never came yet. It never
No,
came
the
yet.
offer-
That was not discussed.
Okay.
That wasn't at that point.
What was discussed regarding that property?
It was just telling us that Puerto Carib had
an
an
interest
interest in
in
acquiring the
purchasing.
property, and that they were going to do a strategic investment because they were going to create jobs and 770 additional
But-
rooms.
Okay, but you knew that before that June 29 meeting, that Puerto Carib wanted the land to buy before the
Yes.
June 29 meeting.
That was known.
So Minister Vaz telling you that was not news to you, because you already knew it.
Remember, we had just had an election, and he was new, the new minister with responsibility. So it was just
Okay.
more like an introductory or familiarization meeting.
Okay. Now, those properties between the rooms and Moon Palace, all of the lands in there, those are not lands that UDC would use for housing. That would be for hotel. Commercial, yes. Commercial activity. So I asked a question, and I'm trying to, any side motive. Those lands, and I know UDC, I have you in my constituency, are very stringent when it comes to your development plans and what lands are used for and not used for. So in Ocho Rios is a prime tourist area. The lands there would be, its most optimal use would be for tourist development activities. So you've been told that this company will bring jobs by building hotels, building hotel or hotels. It's not new to you. It's what happens when you have development. So 1,500 jobs would come, whether it was Puerto Carib or any other developer. There's nothing special in regards to those jobs. They come with whatever development takes place in that area. It happens with any development in keeping with your development, your planning rules. Right. I just want to make that clear. So now you have $7 million.
So,
And
yeah, yeah, well,
I'm finishing now.
the question.
So
yes.
now you had a property that valued $7 million, that offer was for $7 million. You had a valuation of $9.3 million. They wanted the beach in addition to the parcels that they were getting, and they offered you $200,000 more to make it $7.2 million for the properties that together by your valuation is $12.8 million. And that was the offer that was accepted. Is that correct?
Yes,
That was the offer that was
just for the
corrected.
records, Ms. Pinnock. Yes. What you can do, Ms. Pinnock, turn on the other mic
No.
on the other side as well, so that either way you turn.
Yeah.
It's for the hand side.
So,
All right.
so now, my problem is Sibyls. My problem is Sibyls is that you have a property valued at $12.8 million. And the UDC, after its internal discussion with the minister, because in one report I see from the Contractor General's investigation, and I quote, the price, which is the $7.2 million, was determined at the ministerial level. The price of $7.2 million was determined at the ministerial level.
Where is that?
That is from the auditor, the Contractor General's report. All right, I can get the pertinent page and so forth.
Just to clarify me, when Minister Vaz met with the UDC internally in the only meeting we had with him, the price was not discussed. We didn't have the valuation, we didn't have any discussion with
I follow.
It was an introductory meeting,
Yes.
advised
No,
that this group had shown an interest and was willing to purchase. But no price was discussed. We had no board.
No. But I am
Please, one at a time.
I am John. Just on a point of order there, Chairman, because I'm looking at the OCG's report, and it says, based on a copy of the UDC's unsigned minutes of the meeting, the OCG notes that the minister stated that it was a matter of investment and said that it was not Jamaica, it would be elsewhere as everywhere is open for business, and that $6 million offer is currently on the table by Moon Palace. That is what is in the OCG report. Yes, for that June, no, this is Chairman, the management team and the chairman on July 29th, 2016, yes.
June 29.
July 29, 2016.
Our record said June 29.
Whichever, well, this is saying that minutes. No, but she said it's only one meeting that he had.
That only had one, but at that meeting, that is in the minutes, but at that meeting, UDC was not actively in discussion with Port Caribbean. They didn't have an approach us as a management group with an offer.
No.
Can I get a copy of the...
No.
It's online.
No,
It's online.
I did my own copy. No,
It's
online.
online.
I did it online and copied it. But going back, because
Can you just clarify that statement,
Yeah.
please? You just said
that
in
only one
June-
meeting was held.
As a management group, we were not having discussions with Port Caribbean then.
Oh.
We were not involved
So
in
where
any
were the discussions being held?
discussion. The discussion with Port Caribbean and the UDC team took place in August in Ocho Rios.
So
As-
where were the negotiations prior to that?
Pardon me?
Where were the negotiations prior to that? You knew of no negotiations?
No, I wasn't there.
Yeah, because again, Chairman, I'm a little bit taken back by that comment, because the Auditor General, the Contractor General's report, number 16, UDC letter dated June 2nd, 2016, from then General Manager Mr. Desmond Malcolm to the Honorable Minister Darrell Vaz with the caption, recommended price for, and it states, and his recommended price indicate that I write to advise that an overall price of the sum of US 9.3 million United States dollars has been recommended and approved and now refer to your attention. So who approved that if that is the case? This is a letter coming from Desmond Malcolm to the then minister on June 2nd, 2016.
So there must have been discussions.
That would be correct. Mr. Malcolm would have written the minister, but that is not saying that the people at the meeting with Minister Vaz would have been privy to that. Mr. Malcolm wasn't there then.
No,
Mr.
but
Malcolm
he
left.
represented UDC and wrote him then as general manager of the UDC.
Yes, but what I'm saying is two different things. You asked me about the meeting, with June 29th meeting where Minister Vaz was present. I'm saying the UDC's management team that was at that table that day included Donald Hamilton, myself, the company secretary, the DGM in charge of technical services, but Mr. Malcolm was not there then, so we would not necessarily have been privy to that letter. But I'm saying, Porto Caribbean, I'm just trying to make the distinction.
Privy to what letter?
To this
To the
letter?
that letter.
That letter was written by Mr.
By Mr. Malcolm, that was
Yeah.
sent to Minister Vaz.
Yes.
All I'm saying is that the UDC management team that was present at that meeting would not have been in any active negotiations at that point in time with Porto Caribbean.
No, but up until that point in time, up until then, and whatever happened to Mr. Malcolm by then, he was still representing UDC.
Yes, and
Right,
there's no...
So, I mean, a recommendation was then made by the general manager then. So my argument is that the negotiations never start when their first meeting with you and that team. It started before.
And we're not denying that. We're not denying that.
Let me respond. So in our document that we sent, it does show, where it starts, timeline of divestment, it shows you June 15th as the first date. However, before that, it speaks to the divestment process, and that from as early as April 2016, contact was made, but there was no board in place, and Puerto Caribbean submission, the lands were valued, and the valuation was received in May 2016. So that would have been, a valuation would have been done, the valuations were done in May, which would have been before this divestment process, and that would have been when Mr. Malcolm was still general manager. So it is conceivable that Mr. Malcolm would have written a letter after the May valuations indicating the price, indicated the recommending
and then the
sale
then
price.
minister came to the board on July 29 with a
Right.
price of 6 million. Am I right?
That may have been in the discussion, but the offer was received in August. And the offer was received at 7 million.
At 7 million.
The written offer came in August. So there may have been discussion.
Member Stewart. And then Member Whittle.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a simple question here to Ms. Heather
Pinnock.
Pinnock. Yes, it is a little bit too near, so I'm not seeing your surname. But my question to you, Ms. Pinnock, the OCG report refers to a very excessive and generous discount of 3.5 million. What's the rationale there for giving that discount? What is the give back? What came into play? Why there was such an excessive and generous discount of $3.5 million?
So I have here a summary of some of the considerations. The sale price was determined taking into account a number of factors, including there was an existing lease to Village Resort, and Village Resort would have the first right of refusal based on their lease. So that lease would have to be considered in selling to another party. The offer also from the developers, Puerto Caribbean, to support the larger development plans, and over the several phases, and also that it looked at the overall impact of the investment, including the development, as well as the employment and construction. So all of those things here are part of the and also that special agreements, special conditions were put on the sale that if these things did not come to be, that the property could be retransferred. So those were some of the things that were considered in the agreement of the sale price.
Member Witter?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to find out if project proposal document was presented during the initial discussion by the purchaser.
Yes, I have a copy of a letter that they sent early out that included all of their development considerations, including the number of rooms they would add, the construction period, the number of jobs they would add, and the support to the larger Ocho Rios development plan.
And would that help to influence the decision in terms of the consideration
it was looking at a larger development, not just the sale, but the effect of the and the value that the sale would bring.
Right. So the project document, that proposal would influence the decision in terms
the consideration,
of yes. Okay.
My understanding is that it was a negotiation. Ms. Sybil spoke about the group from UDC that met with the persons from Petro-Carib group, and they negotiated and came up with a proposed solution.
But isn't the case, Chairman, that when valuators do valuation, they do it against the background of what is existing in the area and what are the existing prospects at the time for development. So what value they come up with is always factoring.
They may not have had access to what the developer had planned to do because they were not a part. So you engage a valuator. You ask them, yes, they look at the current state of the property and yes, what it may become, but the other considerations, they would not be privy to those information. So they would give me a valuation. I would now go and sit with the developer and say, this is what it is. They would put on the table what their proposal is, and we would sit and negotiate a agreement. And my understanding is that is what transpired. The persons who do the valuation of the property would not have those considerations before.
The valuation is only to give you a reference point.
Yeah, reference. But tell me something. Isn't Ocho Rios one of the prime tourist destinations in Jamaica? And therefore, that by itself is a commanding price factor in all real estate in those areas.
Most definitely. So you bring that to the table, and the proposed developer brings something else to the table. You have trade-off, and you come up with a
that usually determine if you have 2 or 3 prospective purchasers, and you are the vendor, and particularly from a development standpoint, you are going to choose the purchaser who, in your mind, can add more value to what.
If you recall, though, there were no 2 or 3 developers because under the policy, the land divestment policy, because they were already there and they would have got part in terms of the land adjoining their property. And that is very, very clear in the land divestment policy. So you didn't have any competitor. It's not a situation where it was advertised. They stuck to the policy and they used that in the policy. So they came and they said, look, we have a proposal. We want to purchase this adjoining property, and this is what we are proposing.
Okay, so those are what influence you
that's my understanding.
That is what influenced a $5.6 million reduction in the price.
Well, my understanding is that they made a proposal in terms of, actually, it went beyond what Ms. Pinnock has said, because they did a projection in terms of even revenue, sorry, in the government revenue, how much per year the government revenue would be generated to the government in terms of income tax, other kind of taxes.
Is that
they projected in terms of employment of staff. They projected in terms of $1 million that they were making available for the development of their $1 million US and other projections.
So is that a formula that the UDC makes in all its land sales?
I wouldn't say so. You'd look at each on its own merit, because different persons would come with different terms. And it's for us to discuss and negotiate and to determine what is best at that particular time.
Ms. Sybils, my understanding is that that approach is generally taken in greenfield projects, where whoever comes in to invest initially, right, is going to add value and attract more investment in that area. But that approach is not taken in prime development areas, where persons are more inclined to come for what is there rather than what they are seeking to create there. So yes, Mr. Sybils, I take the point that when you want to seed investment in areas, then you'll make discounts like those. In fact, you'll go further. You might even give 5-year moratorium.
Yes, which we give.
Right?
But
because what the investor brings will create jobs, all of those things will happen. But that does not happen in fully. You can't go to New York in Manhattan and give a discount because you're going to get some jobs from a hotel that is built there. Because that's an established, developed area. So I have a difficulty. I'm finishing.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, I realize that the member is leading the discussion all the way. He has gone 8 questions plus his commentaries. And we, the rest of us, aren't able to partake.
Well, 2 things, Member Clark. One, at this point in time, no one else has requested.
Yes, sir, I have been indicating to you,
no,
but you weren't.
Only Member Phillips.
No, I have been indicating to you, and I don't even want to say that on record. But I've been, well, I know.
But I will just say to you, Member Clark.
So you now have to rein in
Member Clark,
Member Jackson, so that Member Phillips can get his questions and I can get to question just the same.
Absolutely. And while there's some sympathy.
No, it's not sympathy, Mr. Chairman. It's a part.
Clark, with due respect, all have had this indiscretion from time to time of questions that go on.
He's getting out of the outer work, Mr. Chairman.
I'm saying that, so please, I
have some burning. See mine here? I have some burning question to ask you.
Absolutely. I remember Jackson has indicated he's wrapping up. So please, let's not prolong this. Member Jackson?
Chairman, I would have completed long ago if I never had that interruption.
Well.
So I was saying, Ms. Sybils, my understanding is that it is not usual for these kinds of massive discount, a discount of $5.6 million below the valued price, to get an investor into an area to do all the other things that are being done there. And that's why this is so mind-boggling. It's also mind-boggling because it is not the norm for the political directorate to negotiate with the entities.
Mr. Chairman, once again, sir, on a point of order. First of all,
there's no point of order to ask how long a person is
Mr. Chairman, sir. First of all, my colleague is using opinion to state as facts, and it's not fact. It is his understanding. That does not necessarily mean it is factual, Mr. Chairman. And at the same time, sir, you have to hold the meeting to order. You said to us we had to make sure that we use the time wisely. So if my colleague is asking questions, fine. But he can't go down the road and continue down the road making opinionated contribution or comments, sir.
Mr. Chairman, I'll just put for the records, my comments is informed by a document that has been tabled in the House of Representatives, for which the member, I've drawn my understanding from the document. Yes, my understanding is derived from the report that has been tabled in the House.
Member Jackson, the question to
yes, just to put in the records, Mr. Chairman, my understanding is derived from this document I hold in my hand, which is a document which is a document tabled in this House by a constitutional authority. And it reads, I just want this to be in the record, on page 11 of the report, item 21, the Honorable Minister Darrell Vass met with the UDC management team and the chairman on July 29, 2016. At this meeting, the UDC was formally advised that the government, through the Ministry of Economic Growth and Job Creation, was in discussions with the owners and operators of Moon Palace to divest the rooms on the beach property. Based on a copy of the UDC's unsigned minutes of the meeting, the OCG noted that, and I quote, the minister stated that it was a matter of investment and said that if it was not Jamaica, it would be elsewhere, as, quote, everywhere is open for business. He stated that the Moon Palace offer currently was low. I'm going to repeat this. He stated that the Moon Palace offer currently was low at $6 million. However, the ministry would be meeting with them to negotiate to increase the offer. That's what the report says from the minutes, that he, the minister, would seek to have the low offer of $6 million increase. So I think the ministry. You read that. You said ministry. The ministry would. Right. So say. And that is his ministry. That does not necessarily that he's going to be the one negotiating. What they taught you at Cornwall? Don't worry about that. I don't know. Mr. Chairman, I'm referring to this document here. It is reasonable to conclude. No, it's a ministry. It is reasonable. Persons within the ministry. Mr. Chairman, can you help me from this?
Yes. No.
Thuggery that I'm being subjected to here?
Yeah, please.
It is reasonable, therefore, Mr. Chairman, to conclude from what the minutes, the document says, that the minister was instrumental in the sale being discounted by $5.6 million. No, because the minutes indicated, he said the ministry would be meeting with them and negotiating to increase the offer.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, please ask the member to read the document as it is stated. It did not say the minister, it says the ministry. It means a technocrat within that works within the ministry. And it is very sad that my colleague is queuing the document by virtue of presenting it to the public as if it is a minister.
Mr. Chairman, you have been a minister before. I have been a minister before. Whatever the technicals, yeah, I've been in 3 ministries, yes.
No, we understand.
Yes. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, you understand that when the technocrats in a ministry takes the negotiation to a minister, the decision is ultimately with the minister and not the technical staff.
No, Mr. Chairman.
And I do not want.
No, Mr. Chairman, you know better.
No,
Mr. Chairman, you know better.
Member Jackson. I think.
If that's how he run the ministries that he was with him, it's not how we do it.
Member Clark, Member Jackson, I think we'd be better served. We have the
ministers,
the technical persons here
We have to protect them.
who we are
And that's what I'm
asking for clarity on the issues. I think if we can keep the
Thank you, sir.
subject matter, we may be better served. Member Jackson, are you completed? Are you, are you
just
finished?
about to complete. I was
Could
interrupted again.
Yeah, but Member Jackson, please, can you?
Yes, sir. Chairman.
Can you, please?
Mr. Chairman, why do you subject me to this weekly, sir? I just want to conclude by saying, Mr. I don't want, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman, the technocrats in the ministry must not be used as scapegoats. They do their work and they do make technical recommendations based upon technical and expertise, the application of their expertise. They make recommendations. Whatever a ministry finally decides on is what the political directorate signs off on. And therefore, the buck stops somewhere.
Yes, with the
and it stops with the minister responsible for the portfolio. And I don't want any of us to want to use the technocrats in any government agency or ministry as scapegoats for the decisions taken by any minister. And the OCG report clearly reflects why is it that a $12.8 million property was discounted by $5.6 million by the decision of a ministry that is headed by a minister.
And
that for me, Mr. Chairman, is the most egregious action against the UDC. The UDC has problem paying salaries.
The UDC is here to defend
because of these giveaways.
The UDC is here.
Member Jackson,
the UDC is here.
Member,
why are you trying to speak on behalf
Phillips?
of them?
All right, members.
The UDC is here.
Please. Member Clark, you had some questions. Please go ahead. Members, please, there's more discussions between ourselves than there are with our guests, and I think that we should just seek clarity from our guests. And if afterwards we would like to have a discussion to determine how we would like in our report, we shall so.
It should go.
All right,
no,
Member Clark, you have the floor with your questions. And Member Clark,
Mr. Chairman,
Member Clark, I would say to you now that you have the floor, that I would ask you to heed your own advice.
Madam PS, or maybe Miss Heather, on record, what was the reason for the deal with Porto Carry Property Limited to have fallen through?
Sorry, if just generally, I think Ms. Pinnock can read the letter, but from what I recall, they're of the view, just putting it in my own words, that their brand has been tarnished somewhat based on the negative publicity coming out of the transaction, just in my own words. But Ms. Pinnock has the letter.
In their letter of March 5th, Palace Resort said, whilst we were engaged in the preparation of plans for the construction of the hotel, it came to our attention, much to our displeasure, that our name and brand were the subject of political discussions inimical to our reputation, in which sufficient care had not been taken to ascertain all of the facts surrounding negotiations with the UDC. We are careful at all times when we do business, both in our homeland country, Mexico, as in any other country we invest in, to comply with the laws and regulations and not to become involved directly or indirectly in the political process of these countries. We seek to be good and considerate corporate citizens of every country in which we invest, and the adverse publicity, both locally and internationally, given to the acquisition of land and buildings by us from the UDC has caused much discomfort, and to seriously rethink whether or not Jamaica is a suitable place for us to make a substantial or indeed any further investment.
So, we heard what is facts by what Ms. Heather just read, and we heard Madam P.S. giving the sum it up in her own words. My next question, Mr. Chairman, to both ladies, would you say that person with ulterior motive, known to the Jamaican public, were acting very irresponsible in the utterance towards this negotiation?
Just for the record, are you referring to the Contractor General? No. But that's where the report came from that generated this.
If you want me to be more specific?
No, but I make the point.
Political activist then.
No,
Let
but
me put it in
I make the point.
And I'm saying, no, it is not the Contractor General, because the Contractor General is on the books of the country of Jamaica to do a certain job. I am saying irresponsible utterance by known political activists,
Chairman,
that would have hindered this negotiation from going through.
Please, just no, Member Phillips, stop. What you know? What is Member Phillips? What is interesting, Member Clark, is that it's a good thing you're sitting beside Member Jackson, because you obviously feel that there's one rule for the Pharisees. and I'm just saying to you, I'm making a point that, and I think that we're going to come to this point because it's something that I want to just get at. P.S., there is an issue, and I think that we are going off in all directions.
No, Mr. Chairman, if you allow both ladies to give us the committee an answer.
Fine. I saw them both looking around.
If they say they can't answer, Mr. Chairman, I'll accept.
Fine. No, let them, yeah, absolutely, if you would like.
I usually don't comment on political utterances. That's not for me to do. It's for you, the politicians. And honestly, I have not been following some of the comments that have been made by persons. I've been integrally involved in the process. I looked at the Contractor General's report, and we discussed it internally. But in terms of, I am not aware of utterances and what implications these would have made on the agreement. The company in its letter did not mention any political utterances. It says and other discussions that I have heard, they have spoken in terms of what has been out there, and I suspect they are saying the comments emanate from the Contractor General's report. And I've heard other things too that probably were not in the letter that would say that even in getting funding to do their projects, that would have been a problem for them because they have to borrow from the international financial market. And if they are perceived in a particular light, then it is going to affect their credit rating. So, these are some of the things that would have influenced their decision.
Madam P.S.
Member Clark,
I know you're very heavy in your Christian faith, and therefore the time you would spend on social media, you would devote that to your Bible, and therefore you would not have seen or aware of what was taking place in the social media domain by the opposition political activists, especially a certain senator.
All right, member.
They say it's for old people, so I stay there and I look every now and then, which is Facebook. I'm not on Twitter and Instagram. I don't have the time.
Mrs. Sewell, please let me try and pull this back. The real reason why I'm interested in this is quite simple. There was a problem there was a problem in the process, which was commented on very strongly by the Contractor General. And ultimately, those comments, which became public fodder, ended up with the company that was doing it indicating that they were not willing to proceed for whatever reason. Therefore, you as permanent secretary must have a determination to ensure that this does not happen again. So the question that I would ask, do you, in looking at the process, what happened, you have seen what it is, you have seen the remarks of the Contractor General, have you put anything in place to ensure that this does not reoccur?
Chairman, the ministry's responsibility is when any matter comes to us, our responsibility is to ensure that the process is followed based on the policy. We are satisfied that the processes were adhered to, and you would have noted that there was no adverse reporting in terms of the ministry's role in all of this.
They're talking the ministry.
The ministry.
So where would you, so the Contractor General's comments were directed at what?
Well, you spoke, Chairman, about adverse comment in terms of the process. And the truth is, when this transaction came to us, Ms. Trotman here, she's the officer who is responsible for preparing the cabinet submission and to pilot it through to cabinet then, through the various channels. And I have every confidence in her and her team's ability. They stick slavishly to the rules and the regulations. However, if outside of the written procedure and some of what was said in the Contractor General's report, these are not things that the ministry could have control over. For example, it was mentioned earlier, and Member Jackson was pursuing that line about the role of Minister Vaz. Minister Vaz was responsible for investment. If he had meetings with UDC to discuss this proposed investment, I would not have seen it as anything untoward. But there were other things that were said that I would not have known, or anybody in the ministry would not have known. So to say, what else would we have done as far as we are concerned?
No, that's not the question I asked. It was very clear, Mr.
No, you have asked what...
what have you as the accountable officer...
Accounting officer, yes.
Accounting officer for the entire ministry, yes, including its agencies, where we have had an intervention of the Contractor General, and we have had a development which has been thwarted. Obviously, somewhere along the line, we have a difficulty with the procedures. Have you had discussions with the agencies involved and yourself to ensure that this doesn't happen again?
I am still saying that the ministry is guided by the land divestment policy. And as far as we are concerned, we ensured that the procedure as outlined in that manual was followed. Where there are deviations, like what was said, personal intervention by a minister, because I think that is what Member Jackson spoke about, Minister Vaz being a part of the negotiation. I don't know that he was, and based on what UDC has said, it was not so. It is an opinion by the Contractor General. I can't say it is right or it is wrong. That's his opinion, but based...
On a point of order, Chairman, the reference I made regarding the minister's involvement is by way of UDC minutes, which he captured in the report that was tabled. It was in UDC's minutes that the OCG captured those comments about his involvement. And I reread what the report said for the benefit of this discussion. He stated, Minister Vaz, that the Moon Palace offer currently was low at $6 million. However, the ministry would be meeting with them and negotiating to increase the offer.
The ministry?
The ministry, yes, that's what I said.
And the ministry, Mrs. Sewell, is you.
The ministry, yes.
And you agree with that? Is that proper protocol?
Well, it's a system, and we did not have that meeting with Moon Palace. I'd never met with anybody from that company.
Would that be proper protocol, Ms. Sewell? Or is that for the agency?
For the agency, but if there is need for any escalated discussion, I would not see that anything would be wrong.
Escalated, would it be that the agency should have the discussion first or the ministry?
And I am of the view that that is what happened. The ministry did not participate in any discussion at all.
The ministry?
Yes, the ministry. So when the
but
minister
we had a
said,
long discussion here earlier as to the difference between the ministry and the minister.
The ministry did not. I am stating here, the minister would, well, based on what was said, may have said so. But the ministry, headed by, I don't know if anybody else besides me or Miss Trowers was involved. I was never part of any discussion. It came to my attention, this matter, when Miss Sybil called me to tell me, as she normally would do, to say that she's sending up some documents for cabinet submission to be prepared regarding the sale of a property. We got the documents and we did what is required of us as the supporting ministry. So, sir, I am still kind of not understanding what your question is or your comment in terms of what have we done to ensure that there's no repeat, because I can't control a minister not going to an agency. It's the agency that reports to him. And if he goes and meets with the executives of a agency, I can't tell the minister that he should not do that. That's his right as the minister. And he met with the board and the executives. But my responsibility, sir, and I have been doing that, is to ensure that whatever comes out of my ministry is in line with government's policy. And I am satisfied that the ministry, where it chipped in, we did what was required of us. I went to the Contractor General's office and I gave statements. And as far as we are concerned, we did what was expected of us in this transaction.
All right, members, Member Phillips has one question. I'm going to ask him to give it, and then we do have I'm going to ask that we terminate. And I have one question from Ms. Pinnock, and then I'm going to ask that we close so that we can move on, unless there's anything.
Chair, I just want to move a little bit back to the point where Ms. Sybil's, right, had mentioned that the UDC got involved in the negotiation, or the team at the UDC, and you said that was around June of that year, of 2016. She has it on.
Our records show that the actual negotiation took place in on September 26, 2016.
All right. September
26, 2016. That's what our records show. That the actual negotiation between Port Caribbean and the UDC team took place in September.
All right.
You're saying that that is when the discussions commenced?
With the team from UDC and a team from Puerto Caribe. Yeah. All right. So that's September 26, 2016. The issue of the price of the beach now itself, which is referred to as Moon Palace Beach. Did the team from UDC participate in the negotiation of accepting the $200,000 proposed for the beachfront property, which was valued at some 3.5 million?
That meeting, sir, the UDC did not have the valuations for the beach then.
All right.
Because Puerto Caribe operated a hotel, Jamaica Grand Moon Palace, and they had a lease on the beach. Apparently that meeting was when it was decided or determined by the other side, I assume, that they wanted to purchase the beach.
All right. So my real question is: was
They wanted to purchase the beach.
UDC a part of the negotiation for the settled price?
For the selling price?
The settled price.
Settled price?
Yeah. That was then accepted by the board and subsequent by the cabinet.
UDC came back and got valuations.
Yes.
Right? And then they presented those valuations, I assume, I was part of that negotiating team. And the other side increased the offer by 200,000. So they would have done a board paper, and the board would determine whether or not they wanted to accept the price. And then after the board paper was done, it went to cabinet, and it was approved.
Well, if a valuation came in for 3.5 and an offer was made for 200,000, it is up for me, who is the owner of the asset, to decide if I am not going to accept or not, or we continue a lease agreement or not. So I'm just asking, was it that negotiating team or that they negotiated, or they just accepted the offer of $200,000?
Offer of 7.2 and the paper prepared by UDC management to the board recommending the price.
So you're saying, so you're answering my question. So UDC management had accepted that price.
Recommended the price, yes.
The recommended price. And that would have been in September of?
The board paper went forward in October of 2016.
All right. And in item 25 in the Contractor General's report, it says the minutes of the meeting stated that Mr. Donald Hamilton, the then acting general manager, in his presentation to the board indicated instructively and importantly that both the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Vaz had agreed to the sale of the amount indicated, as well as their payment schedule, if an agreement can be reached by the end of the month. So in here it is basically the recommendation of both the Honorable Prime Minister and Vaz that came to the board itself of that on the recommendation.
Well, what the board receives is the recommendation of the management to the board. So it may have been said in conversation and recorded in the minutes, but the board paper would have been a paper from the management, right?
Sorry, may I just go in terms of the process and the involvement of the Prime Minister as the minister? When there's a transaction, the board would send to the ministry extracts from the minutes, the decision and recommendation. And before any cabinet submission is done, the minister is asked to give its no objection to proceed. So it's not really formally an approval for the sale, it's the no objection. And thereafter you prepare the submission and it goes to cabinet for cabinet's approval. No. It's the cabinet that approves.
And who prepares the cabinet submission?
It's done in the ministry.
All right. 1 second. Ms. Swell, just remember, Phillips, what you're saying is not quite the same thing. apparently
says that the Prime Minister and the Minister gave their approval.
Yes, no, that it indicated that both of them agreed to the sale.
And that was in the
what
minutes.
I'm understanding
So I am
is,
saying,
could you please, I'm
yes.
saying, this was sent to the board and told to the board members prior to the decision for sale.
Yeah.
In other words, the agreement was brought by the management to the board for the board to make a decision. And in it was said that the Prime Minister has agreed, as I quote.
And I would find that very strange. I would find that procedure very strange, sir, because there's a formal procedure to get the Prime Minister's no objection.
Right.
I don't know how he could have communicated verbally to say, go ahead. Because the procedure is that when the board takes the decision, it comes written to the ministry to say the board, and I make sure that it is sealed by the company secretary, and it comes and we append that and send it to the minister, who is the Prime Minister. So to say that a decision was taken based on some verbal, I don't know if it represents the facts.
But in the report itself, a lot of informal meetings were held, and a lot of things and agreements were actually proposed. So,
well,
this is extract from the board minutes itself. So,
I think the board was misled, because
so you're saying
I was the person
Mr. Hamilton misled the board?
May have, because I oversaw the process, and Ms. Trowers is here. She prepared whatever was to go to the Prime Minister. It never went to the Prime Minister in terms of the sale and the price.
But my question to you then, Madam, yes, since the ministry itself prepares the cabinet submission, how was the beach itself left out of the first submission to the cabinet?
Okay, so when something comes from the board, it comes with the deliberations, what was discussed, what was the decision, and the recommendation. So that came, it went to cabinet, the first one. Then the board wrote to say, through the executives, the executives were directed to inform cabinet that on their part there was an omission, that it was their intention that that should have been included, and a subsequent cabinet submission was done based on the information that came from the UDC, and other things were also included.
Wouldn't you say that it was excluded because there were board members who did not agree with the $200,000 price?
That did not come to us. We worked based on what was presented by the UDC through its executive management. And we did ask questions, and we were given as supporting to the cabinet submission information in terms of the investment, and putting it all together, that initially it should have been part of what was sent.
What's the lease price on the beach? What is on the beach currently, that Moon Palace, public beach? Yeah. Annual lease amount.
I'd have to check for you.
Can you try and get that information for us,
all right,
please?
Members, I'm going to ask Member Stewart, Member Jackson, but I'm just going to ask you to ask a question so that we can move on, please. Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Just to give you the timeline for the approvals, though, the board meeting was held on the 13th of October. That's where it was first presented. And the non-objection request, as PS has described, was prepared and sent on October 19th, and the non-objection was granted. and the cabinet submission went off on October 31st.
Yeah.
So the formal non-objection from the PM would have come subsequent to the submission.
Yeah, but then,
to the ministry.
it had to go back to the board on November.
And it went back to the board on November 2nd to address the parcels that were not included.
But let me tell you my concern, Mrs. Pinnock or Miss Pinnock. Mrs. Pinnock. Right?
She has not objected to either.
She's married, so what not Pinnock. My issue, the issue that I have is really the offer to sale for the 200,000 on a valuation of $3.5 million. And it is not as if you are even 50% of the cost, but you are a discount of basically 98%.
No, 95%.
Right, of 95%
Yes.
of the valuation cost. I have no issue if you wanted to give a discount because of the investment and thing, but it would be very interesting to hear what the lease that you're leasing the beach for now, and how could the board itself, the management itself at the time, agree on a sale price of $200,000 with a valuation price of $3.5 million. That for me it raises questions, hence why there are discussions out there on the sale itself and questions being raised on the sale, because in many instances you hear Jamaicans themselves speak about access to even the beach, that you may lease to a hotel or not, and then to go and basically give away a beach at that price to no benefit to the Jamaican people is something that is questionable. And I'm surprised that the board itself, because when you read the report itself, the Ministry of Finance, even though giving their blessings to the divestment, had concern on the sale price of even the first lot, which didn't even include the beach, because your submission did not include the beach. Initially. You went back to the Ministry of Finance too? Yes. Right? And they still had concerns. They still had concerns on the sale price of the beach itself. So, you know, the thing is, yes, we want the investment, but believe me, this one raises questions. Yeah?
All right, no, Chair. I remember Stuart.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mrs. Pinnock. This is not the first time that UDC is doing major negotiation and sale of assets for the government. But tell me though, is there not a minimum reserve price when you are considering the sale of these properties? That's one. And was there not a cost-benefit analysis or an impact or an economic impact assessment done prior to the sale of these properties? Those are my two questions.
So the minimum, we don't really use minimum reserve price. However, we usually use valuations to give you an indicative figure. For the purpose of negotiation, to use a valuation to give you an indicative figure. And in this case, we had 3 valuations for the land that ranged from 8.7 to I think 9.5. So that would have been the indicative figures. And around the cost-benefit analysis, again, there's not necessarily a direct cost-benefit analysis, but there is an inclusion, as I said, of consideration in establishing the price of the other benefits beyond just the cash price. So what else, what other development opportunities are there? So the UDC has a long-standing plan. Here was a proposal that would advance significantly a portion of that development plan. It looked at the development of the rooms, the opportunities for jobs during construction and when it went into operation, as well as the offer to support the larger development plan from the developer. The offer from Puerto Caribe to support the other things that were happening, that were to happen in Ocho Rios. So I would say all of those were the basis of the discussion of the price, the sale price.
All right, Member Jackson.
Mr. Chairman, some things have been said which is I consider very serious. the PS indicated that the then acting general manager at the time, was Mr. Hamilton's, his representation probably not true. I tell you why I consider this very serious, Mr. It is inconceivable that any senior public servant would go into a board meeting and make a representation referring to discussions or decisions by the Prime Minister and a minister which is not factual. That's the reason I'm saying it is very unusual. And I'm going to tell you why.
No, wait. No, I've lost that.
Let me repeat what I said.
What was the point? I didn't follow that.
Sir, I speak to the formal procedures, and if the Prime Minister's approval, there is a formal procedure in government in how ministerial approval is communicated. And for somebody to go into a board meeting to say that the Prime Minister says without having anything written, then it is no longer. It could be that somebody told him that the Prime Minister says so. I have to stick to the formal procedure. It came to me. We prepared the document, the file. It went to the Prime Minister, and he signed his no objection, you call it, not even approval, because he can't approve it either. It has to be the cabinet. Is no objection to proceed with the process.
Yes,
cannot be
understand.
an approval.
And hence, I think this is a critical issue. It may be instructive for us to see the board minutes, to see the
and context. To have Mr. Hamilton here.
To say that, pardon?
And to have Mr. Hamilton here.
Yes, bring him here.
Just on a point of order here, Mr. The document on which this conversation is based, and I read verbatim, quote, both the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Vaz have agreed to the sale at the amount indicated, as well as their payment schedule, if an agreement can be reached by the end of the month. There is an operational difference
and this is before the
between
board decision.
agreeing and approval. You agreed to something, and the subsequent may have to be approved. What the document says is that the minister and the Prime Minister agreed to the sale amount.
Did he say the Prime Minister agreed in what forum?
1 second. No, he didn't. One second. Mr. Chairman, let us be real. It is a fact that in these matters, many discussions will be taking place.
Mr. Chairman, right? On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, unless there is a document from the said gentleman to say that this is where the decision was taken, the mere fact of hearsay, and for my colleague once again to be hitting on it to say that it is something that is factual. As the Permanent Secretary is saying, that no word of mouth can be factored into the facts. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm asking you, sir, just to guide the colleague and to keep the matters as factual as possible.
I would
don't
say,
know what he said.
1 second, Member Jackson, Member Clark. I would say that what Member Jackson did was to read from the report that indicated that these are part of the board minutes. Now, by the general manager. So therefore, and let me finish. I'm ruling. You made a
Mr. Chairman,
point.
it is still a hearsay argument that was captured in the minutes because the gentleman in question did not provide a document. I have a document from the Prime Minister and the Minister to say that they are in agreement. Instead, the Prime Minister and the Minister is agreeing. Is a fiction.
Yes,
of the imagination.
No evidence was provided.
And I heard
and that's what the PS is trying to bring out. So why are we deliberating the matter, Mr. Chairman?
And so I'll make a suggestion, because what the permanent secretary, what I've heard as sort of Ocho comments is that the general manager may have been less than truthful. That is what is being suggested. So
I said he may have misled the board.
All right. Well,
because that is not the procedure.
So therefore,
that is not the procedure to communicate a ministerial approval.
Especially
before it's unusual.
Before a board has made a decision.
It is unusual for somebody to go and tell a board that the minister approved something when it has not been placed before the minister before. It is highly unusual.
Highly unlikely.
Therefore, I would like to
Therefore,
suggest to
Mr.
my
Chairman,
committee,
we need to take the hearsay argument out of the situation.
Absolutely, and I will suggest, Member Clark, that what we need to do is to ask the UDC to furnish us with the minutes of the meeting, and I would like us to invite the former general manager to come and indicate whether or not these discussions were truthful or not.
Mr. Chairman, him coming here to say that yes, still does not provide, because in the meeting, he and I can talk about anything on the outside, but it is word against my word. How is it that it's going to be proven that yes, he did have a discussion with the Prime Minister and the Minister? Because I am betting my dollar that he's going to come to say that somebody say to him that they had a discussion with the Minister and the Prime Minister. It is going even further. More hearsay argument, Mr. Chairman. But I do understand this time of the year.
No, I would.
When we are
in
the silly season,
I can't
and
believe,
persons will look for just about anything in the year stock.
No, I can't believe that you're saying that a civil servant, a former general manager of the UDC, would act in that regard. So
no, but Mr. Chairman, if you listen to what the PS said about that matter, she said she is not of the belief, and she's not believing that could have done, because there is a formal way, there's a protocol.
What could be done, Member Clark?
So what you're saying,
no, that what can be done. Sorry, that what could not be done.
The process doesn't work that way. That's what the PS is saying.
The Prime Minister would be giving approval before documents were placed before him.
What you're saying is that the general manager was being less than forthright with his
work. The PS said
no, sir, I didn't
that
say
he misled. She's of the belief that he might have misled, Mr. Chairman.
No,
the way that you play with words.
He might have misled.
Misled. That's what the PS said. Might have or may have misled.
If the board remember, it was a new board, and they probably were not quite au fait with the process. And for us, the approval process starts with the board approving the sale, recommending to the ministry further action. Then we get the no objection to proceed from the portfolio minister. So I can't see, because that would be implying that somebody at a high level would have acted inappropriately. How could the Prime Minister approve a transaction that he has not seen anything before him?
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman, the report that we make reference to don't speak about any approval. In the government service, no, Mrs.
You said
No, Madam Pierce. Madam Pierce, with all due respect, most of us are aware of the process of approval. No, that's not what I said.
What you said?
Read again.
No.
He said, it says.
Yes.
It says, and I read.
Read carefully.
Both the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Vaz have agreed to the sale at the amount.
No, Mr.
Please, Mr. Cut out this.
What's your point of order?
I asked a colleague of mine to read the entire No. Read the entire statement. Read it.
Yeah.
I will oblige.
Yeah.
I will oblige. Quote, both the Honorable Prime Minister and Minister Vaz have agreed to the sale at the amount indicated as well as their payment schedule if an agreement can be reached by the end of the month. Mr. Chairman. Please, Madam Pierce. Please.
Yes.
21. Mr. Chairman, Pierce, you know, most of us know, that there's a process for approval in government. And the cabinet submission, etc., is part of that process of approval. Before you get to the point of approval, some agreement have to be reached between the parties involved. What the minutes captured there, what the minutes captured as was reported, is what was agreed to between the parties. And it is also of record, as Ms. Sybil's indicated earlier, in the June 29 meeting, that there was discussions taking place between the executive team of UDC and Minister Vaz.
And I'm still disagreeing with you, Member Jackson, that I being integrally involved in the process, this transaction, that it did not go in terms of the price and all of that, did not go to the Prime Minister until the file was prepared by Ms. Trowers and sent to him for his no objection.
So, Miss, hold on,
disagreeing, sir.
Member, so I just want to ask one question then.
My position, this is the fact that I know, and I have other reason to support my position. that
Madam Pierce.
It went to the Prime Minister.
Yes.
It could not be. If you just
the
allow me,
Prime
please.
Minister then,
No,
Madam
please,
Pierce.
Member Phillips, please allow her to continue.
All right.
And then you ask your question.
I went to the Contractor General and I gave a statement. I was questioned extensively about the process. And we outlined at no time it was said to us that the Prime Minister agreed to any price. What came to us as the genesis of the process was that the board, it was a board decision, and UDC, the board, asked the Prime Minister through the executive management to get his no objection to proceed. And we did just that. As far as I'm aware, there was I don't see anything to say that the Prime Minister participated in any negotiations. And I'm still going to say, sirs, that anybody I have sat before persons, heard persons saying this person say, and many times the permanent secretary said, and this is on the PS's desk and whatever. What I would want to know is on what occasion did the Prime Minister communicate his agreement to Mr. Hamilton, and it wasn't communicated to us in the ministry or any other executive of the UDC. Through what medium did he communicate his agreement? And if the Prime Minister did not communicate with him directly, through whom that agreement was communicated?
As it is stated here, it says the minutes of the meeting stated that Mr. Donald Hamilton, the then acting general manager, in his presentation to the board, indicate he did not present anything. He just merely speak. He merely spoke. That both the honorable minister, Vaz, and the Prime Minister agreed to the sale. So, Mr. Chairman, what are we saying? That they had a side talk somewhere outside? Was he represented? No, but that cannot be in.
Just for clarity,
I want to look at 42, Chairman.
Mrs. Sewell, just for a point.
Yeah.
If the board was meeting to approve this, the board, which is a politically appointed board, was meeting to approve this deal. And the general manager indicated to the board, as the board minutes say, that both the Prime Minister and Minister Vaz, right, have agreed to the sale. Would that not be seen as sort of moving to influence the board?
Sir, I asked the question, what would be his motive?
And secondly, would that, in your understanding of public procedure, would that be inappropriate?
I would say so, yes, because if the board had not yet deliberated and taken a decision, and somebody walks into a board meeting and says, oh, the Prime Minister has agreed, so what's the point of us discussing? You're going to go with what the Prime Minister says. And this is why I am saying, when statements like those are made, if I were at the board meeting, I would ask, show me on what basis, or I would want to consult the Prime Minister to find out if he did in fact agree to this, because anybody can say anything. And I would like to see and know, because I don't want to be a part of any process where decisions are made and then you are following the formal line and not knowing that previous decisions are made. And I said earlier that as far as I am aware, it went to the Prime Minister when the file was prepared and when it was presented for his no objection to proceed. And I said, and I'm repeating, I have reason to know that he did not participate in such discussion and did not give any directive.
No, but would you say then, Madam Pierce, because looking at the OCG's report.
Member Phillips, before you say it, I just put in a notice that the last item I'm going to be taking.
Not a problem, Chair.
And
I won't be long. In the OCG was also provided with a copy of the UDC's unsigned minutes of the meeting of Management and Portfolio Minister. Yeah. All right, and the OCG notes from, all right, it says Minister Vaz outlined that the government through the ministry was having discussions with Moon Palace Resorts Limited in having regarding the purchase of the room. So it would have been dealt with at the ministerial level through the Ministry of Economic Growth. So, and then going back now, it says where it says at number 42, Mr. Henry Donald Hamilton, Deputy General Manager, Finance and Treasury, was asked at a hearing. He said discussions had taken place between representatives of OPM and the Moon Palace, and they outlined their intent. And the Prime Minister, along with Minister Vaz, had basically agreed on that figure. And that was what was presented to me and informed me to put the decision to the board. So you're saying that
presented to him how? Because nothing.
But what's surprising is that I'm sure you have read the report itself.
Yes, I have. But I couldn't change it.
No, but I'm sure you would have disagreed with the OCG in his report that those information would have been wrong.
I am
because
saying
I'm sure you would have had discussions with the Prime Minister.
So let me ask the question. Did anybody ask the question?
Of directives of the Prime Minister.
How was it? But sometimes reports are done, we have to interrogate them. If he said there was a meeting and the Prime Minister agreed, but it was presented to him, how was it presented to him?
All right. So my question to you, are you saying that Mr. Hamilton is not being truthful in his representation?
I am not saying that. I am asking some questions. Who presented what to him? Because if it were presented to him, it could also infer that he was not at that meeting.
Well, can I say that?
So sometimes we have to probe further.
But just like in other reports, after the reports have been tabled, Mr. Chairman, members or persons who have been mentioned in the report would have gone back to the Office of the Contractor General for corrections to be made. In this instance, this report has been tabled for some time now, and nobody from neither the Prime Minister's office have disputed anything that has been said in this report.
Of course, Minister Vaz has responded.
Say what?
Have you seen the response? But you don't go through point by point, and he responded, and he tried to clarify whatever was said about him. But I am speaking now specifically. If Mr. Hamilton says, and it is reported in the report, that a meeting was held at OPM and the Prime Minister agreed, and then he says, and that was what was presented to him, who presented it to him? I would not have asked any question
My
because guess
question
what?
To you.
No, let me just finish, please.
Continue.
I would not have asked any question because I know I wasn't party to that and I didn't present any such thing to Mr. Hamilton.
My last
so
question.
I would ask Mr. Hamilton who presented to him the agreements that were taken in that meeting, because it's kind of contradictory. Was he there? If he was there, there was no need for anybody to present anything to him.
As acting general manager, I would have hoped that he would have been involved with the negotiation. But my last question to you, since it is that the Prime Minister will do a no objection to the price, as the Minister...
Not to the price.
To the offer that has been put to him?
The no objection is to proceed with the negotiations and the conclusion. So it comes and the board would make a recommendation to say, this is what, and so and so and so. And when he gives the no objection, then you do the draft cabinet submission. You go to Ministry of Finance. If there's a need to go to Attorney General,
so as a permanent secretary in that ministry, and when they offer for 7.2, which would have included the beach, and I'm sure, I would hope that the Prime Minister would have asked for all supporting documents. The
supporting documents were presented, yes.
The Prime Minister then gave his approval to, or no objection. Even after seeing the valuation for 3.2 million, 3.5 million for the beach, and seeing a settled price or negotiated, accepted price of 200,000, did he give his no objection to that also?
Well, in the sense that we did. Please, please, Mr. Jackson.
Madam Pierce, I asked you the question.
No, members.
Am I to answer, Chairman, or am I not to answer?
No,
yes,
please,
you're to
members.
answer.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask all three members in the front bench.
On a point of order, Mr. Chairman.
I don't know. On
a point of order, Mr. Chairman. On a point of order, Mr. Chairman. It is getting out of hand. Wherein Member Jackson continues to abuse the technocrats in here each time. And you sit there and allow it to happen.
I would not.
At least the person sitting across from us and speaking is a lady. And he must have some respect.
I do not.
He already earlier on called me a thug. And I want Ansar to have it, that he must apologize for it, because the next thing you know, you let him take things for granted and take it even further. He must behave himself.
I thought that having the two of you sit beside each other might have been a good thing.
He and I can have friendly banter, but when it comes on to the technocrats, he must operate in a certain way.
So, members, can I ask that we tone down a little bit?
On a point of order, the member said I called him a thug.
Yes, you did.
I didn't.
Yes.
What I did say, I was subjected to thuggery.
Madam Pierce.
All right, Mrs.
All right.
Please.
And you would have seen in the Contractor General's report that we had one slip administratively, because when the second request came from UDC, we were told that they had the Petrocaribe had some decisions, urgent decisions to be made in terms of the transactions with their financiers and so. And so the slip on our part was that we did not do a second letter of no objection. However, what we did was a second cabinet submission, and which explained what had happened and we got the supporting documentation in terms of what they are going to.
But I would imagine, though, that as the minister.
And we did say to the contractor general that we erred there, but we corrected it.
So what you're saying is that the minister with responsibility, who is the prime minister, then did not know that the original price had included, that's separate and apart from the cabinet submission, that he did not know that that 7.2 included the beach itself?
I'm sorry, I'm not understanding. Remember when it came, the original...
You're referring to the cabinet submission, which did not have the beach included.
The second part, the 3.5. Yes,
the 200,000.
Yes.
Because that's what it, So let's go back now. The no objection would have come before the cabinet submission.
Yes.
The Prime Minister himself would give the no objection from the documentation that came from the board and the UDC on the sale price. I am sure that he would have been informed on the negotiations, even if he was a part or not a part, I don't know. That he would have been informed that the final sale price, be it by verbal, by his minister without portfolio, or yourself, or even the chairman of the UDC then, whoever, that the negotiated price of $200,000 for the beach itself, which had a valuation of 3.5. So he would have given the no objection with that knowledge.
No, remember I said when the first submission came, it did not include the beach.
So you're saying to me that the Prime Minister knew nothing of none of the negotiations taking place?
No, No, I am not saying that. When the documents came to us and the 7-point-something million proposal did not include the beach.
And I'm asking the question, Madam Pierce.
So he's no objection.
No, remember, Phillips, let her finish. I'm trying to understand.
So it's 2 times we got submission from UDC. The first one
was with land.
No, please,
was with the land for the
and the building
and the
first package, what I call package 1, package 2. Yeah.
And we did a cabinet submission. Cabinet approved the sale.
This was for
package 1.
7 point.
Yeah, 7.2. Right. It came for 7.2.
Right.
Yes.
I don't have the figure. I pack up my things because, and then UDC wrote to the ministry to say that there was an omission on their part, the board, and that this land, the beach,
was
whatever
was omitted from the first
and it cabinet. Should have been. Let me finish. It should have been a part of the original price. Submission. It should have been included in the original.
So I'm saying to you. Again, the first submission went to the cabinet for 7.2.
Yes.
But the the beach was omitted from the submission.
Yes. Yeah, they didn't send it.
And I'm asking the question. The Prime Minister, who was involved with the negotiations from even prior before the board got involved, because the team from Puerto Caribe, met with the Prime Minister even before. Prices were, if I'm to go by the Contractor General, and you might discount it, but prices were put on the table, all of that. Hold on, let's.
I just want for the records, I'm not discounting the Contractor General's report, and I don't want that to be stated, but if something is stated that the Prime Minister says, or the Minister, we ought to have evidence and we ought to probe.
Well, let's just get to the point, though. Thanks for your... When the 7.2 came, when the submission came from the UDC board to the Prime Minister, our management makes the recommendation to the ministry. It came for 7.2 with an omission of including the beach on it. Yeah? Remember, the first price was $7 million. Renegotiation took place for the beach and a settled price of $200,000, which brought it to 7.2. That submission would have gone to the Prime Minister, and he would have given a no objection to the 7.2, which then you will now prepare the cabinet submission. Well, my question is, did the Prime Minister, or was he aware that the valuation of 200,000, that additional 200,000, was for the beach itself before giving the no objection?
Okay, and I said that we made an error administratively in the ministry because we did not, and it is in the Contractors General's report, that we did not go back to him and say, and we just got caught up. We just
did not go back to who?
The Prime Minister, for the second no objection.
No,
but what we did,
no, what I'm trying
when the first one, nobody in the ministry knew that the beach was excluded.
No, that's
we
fine.
Didn't know.
No, that's
so
fine.
So he would not have
that's
known.
On the submission.
Right.
But he would have given his no objection, even though it was left off the cabinet submission, the beach itself, that the price of 7.2, the price of 200,000 would have been for the beach itself.
No, it would not have gone to him at the first instance. No. This is what I'm trying to explain to you. That when the first submission came from UDC, it had nothing, no mention was made of the beach. So what went to the Prime Minister was for the first set of property that was sold, the land. After he gave his no objection, UDC wrote and said that they made an error because the beach was excluded and it should have been a part of the original submission that came into the ministry and went to the Prime Minister and went to Cabinet. And we said, okay, we will have to go back to Cabinet to inform Cabinet that what was approved had excluded the beach, and that we would have to ask for their approval. And so we did a cabinet submission. A second cabinet submission to inform Cabinet that the UDC board has informed the ministry that in the negotiations, the beach was a part of it and whatever price that they had settled, but they did not send that to us. And it didn't go to Cabinet.
But Ms. Swell, I think what Member Phillips is getting at is simple. If you need to get a no objection from the Prime Minister to generate your cabinet submission, when the board negotiated and
the team,
he would
management is
when the board determined that it was going to give the 3 lots of land, not including the beach, and sent that to Cabinet, that would have had to have generated a no objection from the Prime Minister to generate.
Yes, that's a process.
So the follow-up, you saying that they did a second cabinet submission without to add another piece to it, a significant, another nearly 4 billion, and did not advise and did not seek a no
well, as I said, Chairman,
Prime Minister,
as I said,
no objection from the Prime Minister.
We erred in the ministry, and I outlined it to the Contractor General, and it is in the report, that because of the rush, we were told that the transaction was at risk, etc., etc.
But I disagree there, Chair.
The UDC, because And so there was some timeline, I was told, and it was a genuine omission on our part. However, as I said to the contractor general, that we thought that we didn't go back and say to the Prime Minister, sign this, no objection. No. We admitted the error. You know why? But Madam, I'm sorry, just please, can I just finish? Can I just finish, please?
Yes, go ahead, member.
And so I said to the contractor general that when we did the second submission, however, it went to the Prime Minister, so all the details were there.
Who signs the submission?
The Prime Minister signs the submission.
So both the first and the second submission were signed by the Prime Minister.
Yes, and all the facts were in there. So we admitted to that omission, and it's because we were pushed in terms of timelines, and we will make mistakes, Chairman. I'm not going to cover it up. I put it on the table with the contractor general that, oops, we did not go back to the PM. But the fact that we did the submission and it has all the facts in there.
And the fact that he signed it.
He signed it, sir. And it went to Cabinet.
He was the one that carried it to Cabinet.
Yes.
But Chairman, the part that is sort of befuddling me is that the first submission was done with the full price, which would have included the negotiated price for the beach, which was $7.2 million. Huh? $200,000 for the beach, Madam PS. Right? Now, the volume and folio number for the beach was left off of the first submission. Right? Are you saying to me that prior to the submission itself, the Prime Minister knew nothing of the negotiated price for the beach?
All sorts of things are being branded about what the Prime Minister knew and what he did not know. I cannot state as a fact that he did not know. What I can state is that my responsibility is to put the facts before him as given by the UDC coming out of the board deliberations, decisions and recommendations. And whatever we got from UDC went to the Cabinet through the Prime Minister.
So is that $3.3 million US mistake then?
Mistake? What do you mean by mistake?
Omission.
I have stated the facts. I'm not going to give any opinion.
No, but
all right. No, member.
I support member Phillips' point. What I heard member Phillips saying, by virtue of the omission of the property for the beach,
it was already negotiated,
right? By virtue of its omission in the submission, it has a value. It has a value. The omission of 445 million, or use it straight US dollar, 3.3 million US dollars. That is the value of the omission. Because from what the PS is telling us, the submission of $7.2 million did not include the beach property. And that beach property, by virtue of the price submitting, would be an omission of $3.3 million. And that's why I believe the member is absolutely correct when he said the omission is a $3.3 million omission. No. Using 130, using an exchange rate. Using an exchange rate of 135, Mr. Chairman, it's $445 million was omitted in the submission to the OPM. Right. And on the other hand, Mr. Chairman, which we must not omit, the contractor general report quoted the acting general manager as saying that the price agreed to, the price being submitted, was agreed to between the Prime Minister and the Minister and Minister Vaz. It is in the report on page 11.
All right.
And reaffirmed on page 17 at number 42.
All right.
Members.
Members, I've been trying. Member, no, I wasn't talking about that.
Just for some clarity, I don't believe that the submission from the ministry would have been an omission of that 3.3. The agreed figure, the figure put forward by UDC management to the board, which was approved, was a 7.2 for everything. And the 7.2 for everything was what was sent to the ministry. Even though that was what was sent to the ministry, the volume and folios were not included. As you see, it's a long list. They were not included, but the value would have been the same. The 7.2 would have been the same.
But that's the point. So the point I'm trying to get to, Ms. Pinnock, is that the Prime Minister gave a no objection for the sale, both of the at 7.2, which would have been the building, the property, the lands, the parking space, the walking space, the driving road, and the beach.
Yes.
But all that was left off of the submission was the volume and folio number. So the point, so what I'm getting at is that the Prime Minister knew that the price for the beach was discounted by $3.3 million, and he gave a no objection to it. That's all I'm getting at.
That's all. Well, the cabinet, because they...
The cabinet, yes, but the submission was done by him. So the cabinet approved the sale of the beach with a discounted price of $3.3 million US, and a no objection to the sale of the price of the beach for that amount was given by the then minister, who is the Prime Minister. That's all I'm getting at.
Non-objection was only received for the first cabinet submission.
Yes, but which would have included the whole lot, but all that was left off of it was the volume and folio number. So it was his understanding that it would have included the whole lot. Yes. And administratively, as the PS said, because of all the rush, she did not recognize that that was not there and had to come back. But the 7.2 was on the first submission.
Yes, it would have
and the no objection was given for that.
Yes,
that's all I'm trying to get at.
You're correct.
No, the omission, what? No, when the second submission came from UDC, it says that the beach property should have been a part of the original submission, but it was excluded, so it didn't come to the ministry. So we had to go back to cabinet to say to cabinet that the beach part, the beach property, was excluded from what came into the ministry and went to cabinet, and it should have been a part of the 7-point-something million.
I think we're all agreed. We're all agreed. All right, members, as I indicated before, I think that we have gone through extensively the details with the UDC. I would ask UDC members to send us a copy of the board minutes if that would be appropriate for...
And the lease, yes, the lease of the beach property itself.
And we can, as a committee, I think that we could ask, if it is even by report, even by letter, ask the former general manager for clarification, given all the allegations that have surfaced here today and all the confusion that has been
There's
raised.
one clarification I would like to be forthcoming. The basis of the termination of the sale. Because when we had asked for a copy of the sale agreement between... we got it. I'm referring to it. I went through the force majeure clause in the agreement, and I couldn't find anything resembling brand damage as a basis of withdrawal. So I would really like UDC to tell me, how is it that this brand damage becomes a basis of the cancellation of the sale? I read through...
It had said that if it were not, they had not
if
started by
construction.
April 2020. So that in itself can stand, that they really had not started, but their justification for not starting is A, B, C, D, E. It didn't ask that give any reason.
Yeah, hold on. This, as I understand in the sale agreement, the deadline set is for the vendor to act if the purchaser failed to activate the activity. So it would appear.
Legal General Counsel don't agree with you, sir. So you may want to ask.
Yes, my understanding, and I welcome the clarification. The deadline for commencement by the purchaser provides a basis on which the vendor could consider a default by the purchaser and could rescind the sale or any other action that the vendor believes is to protect their interests. In other words, you don't want to sell this property and they sit on it for 5, 6, 10 years and no development take place, when you would have agreed on a sale price for all the benefits that were spoken about earlier on. So could counsel me on the basis on which the brand damage is why or how the UDC
but I don't know if that this is the appropriate forum for us to be discussing something that may become some. Has the transaction been concluded? Are there any concerns about it? You're moving forward with it?
We're moving forward, but it's not.
That's what I have a problem with. That's what I have a problem with, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
I want to hear from what the General Counsel says, sir.
Sure.
I was just clarifying what I want to have her clarify.
Mr. Well,
yes.
Let us hear what the legal interpretation.
No, I was complete in my understanding to get the clarification.
And Mr. Jackson, my apologies to you and Ms. Well, it was more my fault. I was trying to be protective, but I'll give me your assurance. Yes, go right ahead.
Remember, the force majeure clause is limited in certain circumstances. That's limited. The force majeure clause is applicable to force majeure, which is a different concept in law, right? However, in practice, a contract is between two parties, and either party can decide that they want to rescind the contract. So it wouldn't come under force majeure, because we have had other situations where sometimes people, for whatever reason, can't find the capital for whatever reason, or somebody decide not to pursue an agreement. The contract allows you to exit if you have the agreement on the other side. In this case, they have signed a retransfer, and if for any reason you can't commence the development at the time that you should have commenced it, and April 30th, 2020 has passed. So that's why we haven't retransferred.
Mr. Chairman, I am worried because what I know do take place. A purchase is made, say $100 million is the purchase price. The vendor, having fulfilled all the terms of the sale, give the land to the purchaser, collects the $100 million, if that is the purchase price, and proceed to spend the $100 million as it see fit. If the purchaser, for whatever reason, brand damage or investment climate or whatever, you said, look, I want to rescind the sale. If I was in the UDC and the government, I would say, fine, I will agree to return it at such time that I get an alternate purchaser, so that you are not in an injured position of having used the money and have to find it or budget it for other purpose. You say to the vendor, yes, good corporate relations, I will rescind it. Your business decision say you can't go ahead. I will have to find an alternate buyer for that. When that is achieved, the money will be returned. Did the UDC, did the government sought to exercise those latitude to protect the purse of the UDC? Because right now the UDC is struggling to pay their staff members, because there's a hole in their budget because of this decision taken. for this untimely and unplanned return of the proceeds from the sale. It is irresponsible of any member of the government to agree to such when they are put in a bad position. It's unfortunate, it's regrettable.
Member, your points are noted. However, the transaction, the retransfer has not occurred yet. We're in the process of determining how we would address it. Yes.
All right. Okay, members.
That will come on them. I've always defended the public service. I had responsibility for them for 5 years.
One last question. One last question. One last question. What is the? Could you say what is the loss incurred on the part of the government as it relates to this transaction in terms of monetary cost?
Well, as I said at the beginning, we had not budgeted for any repayment this financial year, and that was before the pandemic. So we had produced our budget, submitted it, had been tabled before we received the letter saying that they wanted to rescind. So it had not been considered, and it's a significant amount of money. It had not been considered in this financial year. And then, now that we have had a pandemic, even more difficult to consider it in this financial year, which is why, as I said to the member, we are reviewing what our options are to address that.
No, when I said yes, but I want to know in terms of what would have been paid down, what have been the cost of the whole negotiation.
You mean the retransfer, if there was a cost to us?
Right.
The purchaser covers the cost of the retransfer.
So there will be no monetary loss as it relates to the UDC in terms of the deal
Not
itself.
for the transaction, not for the retransfer, no.
Okay. All right. Ms. Pina, just in closing, I'm going to ask something. About 3 years ago, we had made a request of UDC when in our normal sittings for you to give us a list of all the sort of divestment that had taken place. We had gotten something from you, but it had a lot of minutiae. It was all over the place. And I'm going to ask if you can just go back, just the big divestments. When I'm saying tourism, beaches, lands, any of those sort of divestments that has taken place over the period of time, could you just give us a list? I don't think there's a lot, but certainly, but could you just give us a list and the prices, etc. of that? We had gotten it, but it was pages and pages of every single little shop, because you have a lot of things, but we were really looking at the bigger issues which would have come to us. So if you can just sift through everything that has been done since that, you'd have gotten, you remember that discussion from back then? Yeah.
Mr. Chairman, the PS had indicated about the omission from UDC to our ministry for the submission. I'm curious if that board of the UDC is still in place.
A new board was appointed not so long ago.
All right, no, I'm not.
And those board members are blacklisted?
No, member Jackson. I think you're doing this solely for member Clark's benefit. P.S. Ms. Pina, let me thank you. Let me thank you all for coming, and you and the entire team, and travel safe. Thank you.
And thanks very much for coming to him.
Well, Members, I'm trying to, as much as possible, we're going to be brief with regards to this. Let me welcome the team from the Ministry of Industry, Commerce, Agriculture and Fisheries. Got it right. Well, that's enough. And in particular, RADA. We had indicated, as we do often, there was a list of roads, the farm roads that are to be done. And a list had been submitted earlier this year when the budget was bigger. We had a budget of you had a significant budget when it was tabled, right? How much was it? Just the mic, yes.
1.25 billion.
Yes. And after the restructuring of COVID, that fell to
525.
Right. So it's about 40%. Now, we had asked for a list of roads at that point, which we got. But now, with the cut, we had asked asked RADA to give us the new list of roads. Now, the list came in on last week, and when the list came in, a number of members were concerned because the roads had been selected, and to be frank with you, looking at the roads, these roads, some of them, in other words, the method of selection came up again. And I just made the point that on a number of occasions before, and I pulled some of the reports, we had indicated that during the process of selection of the farm roads that there was a consultation with the parish managers, the parish RADA, including the members of parliament, simply to have a coordination. Members of parliament, farm roads form part of the network. So you have farm roads, you have parochial roads, you have main roads, you have even some other roads that don't have any designation. And as members of parliament, we're constantly trying to fix ones that are the most in-demand, useful roads in the constituency. So often when these selections are taking place, we would be talking to the NWA, the parish, the municipal councils, rather, as a coordination. So it was agreed to, and the former minister of, not the current, but the former minister with responsibility for your ministry had given us a commitment that there would be at least consultation. Now, what happened is that when this list of roads came, it came to us that many of us had no consultation about the roads. And hence, we called to just see if we could clarify where we were going. And subsequent to that, even in Parliament yesterday, there was a discussion with a wider group of persons, and there was even more discussion about it because many members of Parliament had no clue that these roads had been selected. In other words, they have had discussions. What they understood were the priorities certainly were not reflected in this list. So there are a few things that I would really want to put on the table first. Do you have a master list of the farm roads in your constituency? You have it?
Yes, Chairman.
All right. You have it with you? You have a spare copy by any chance?
Yes.
Yeah, because that would be very useful. All right. Secondly, I'm going to try and, all right. So these would be, let me take a look. I'll say, wow, this is a big. So this is all the roads?
Yes. And yes, that have been recommended, and we continually to update as we go along.
Chair, just through you, Chair. This list that was presented to us is the final list
That's
for
the final
this financial year?
Yes, for this financial year.
For this financial year.
Yes.
So just to ask you now, so this is a list. So do you make recommendations as to which roads which are the roads that, from your parish, do you have a list of roads that you would indicate to the, that are what you would say as priority roads?
Yes, the parishes would normally, from the master list or from their parish list, would normally indicate to us which one they think would be more.
And you
priority.
send that list to the board and to
yes,
different
everything is sent to the board, right. And it is.
You have a copy of that list?
Yes. It is normally highlighted on the master list, but we pull it out.
Okay. All right.
We pull it out.
Maybe we can get these circulated. Can I?
Do you have a technical person who deals with the road in your?
Yes.
You have a technical person.
Mr. Prendergast, Director of Engineering.
Okay. So he would be the one. Team. So he would be the one who would give the recommendation.
No, the parishes would indicate which from among the list that they would have put together, indicate which one they think would be priority, and the priority would depend on where the road is and the condition of the road. So if the road is in a production zone, high production zone, like in Cano Valley, or then and the number of farmers that actually use the road, the level of production and the enterprises within those areas, then high priority would be given.
So quickly, at the end of it, when the officers make the recommendation, who do the final sign off in that respect?
The parish would have compiled a list, because in a parish you have different extension areas. So roads would be coming from different extension areas. So the parish would compile that list, and then the parish manager and the parish, along with the advisory board out there, would sign off on that list and send it up to our zone. And then the zonal director, now we have two zones, eastern zone, western zone. East zone would compile for the parishes under that area and merge them, then it comes to me and I would send it to the board for final selection and recommendation.
So where would Mr. Prendergast falls in this process?
Implementation, but he and his team would go in the, to verify that it meets the, so while the extension officer is not a technical person for roads, the engineers would go and to verify the condition, because they have to do scoping.
Sorry to cut you. Sorry, but just I'm just something I'm seeing here that troubles me a little bit. You sent a master list.
Yes.
And you have sent a list of the recommended roads.
Yes.
But I've looked at two parishes, the ones that I'm most familiar with, Westmoreland and Hanover. And where you have 5 roads selected, 1, 2, 3, 4, on each.
Yes.
Only one road was recommended, on the recommended list from Brother. So, in other words, if you are recommended roads, who is making the decision of which roads are to be done?
Well,
if your recommendations, none of these coincide.
The final recommendation resides with the board.
So you're saying the board meets and just determines which roads and sends it
from the master list that we would have submitted.
So they just send it down. Okay. Yeah.
Chairman, quickly. To Mr. Tom. How would you justify, sir, there are 12 roads in Manchester?
Yes.
And 7 have gone to one constituency alone. How do you justify that? When, as you said, Cano Valley in my constituency, South Manchester, is one of the largest farming area. and you would have omitted that, and 7 roads have gone to one constituency. How do you justify that?
As I said, the boards make the final decision as to what
All
happens.
right, members, let me make a suggestion here, because I don't want us to put the technical people into difficulties where we're going to be asking them questions that possibly cannot be answered. You said the board makes the final decision. I would suggest, members, that we invite the chairman of the board to come and indicate to us and go through this list with us. I would suggest, Space, could we invite the board chairman to attend the meeting next week, Wednesday, and we'll have a discussion as to the farm work program. And members, I would suggest also not to delay us much further. There is something that is in the media very strongly, the issue of the Holland lands, and at the same time that is in the media where, well, Rada is here, the board chairman had indicated he's doing an audit. I would suggest that next week that we also invite the Sugar Company of Jamaica, the principals. Let's see if we can get to the root of this issue that is taking place at Holland. If that's the case, then it would suit us not to belabor or to dig too deep into the discussion today, but to reconvene next week, Wednesday, with the entire team and take this thing in SCJ. The lands belong to whom? Through who? Through the commissioner?
The government.
Is it commissioner of lands?
SCJ.
SCJH. Right.
They own
so
the lands.
you are on track, Mr. Chairman.
No, I didn't know if we needed the commissioner of lands. That's
no, what you need is SCJH.
All right.
Huh? Yes. Yes.
All right. So that would cover everything, PS.
So you need Mr. Shukir and you need Mr. Myrie.
Yes, absolutely. I think there are a number of questions because, as I said, Mr. Myrie, I understand, well, you know, all right, let's leave that.
Chair, there are other, and PS, bear with me, because there are other agreements that SCJ has gotten into, which are similar, namely with the Jamaica Cane Growers Association. Huh? All Island Cane Growers Association. Yes. So, if Chair, if you don't mind, the leadership of that organization, because there's somewhat of a cross-threading, because Mr. Myrie, who is chairman of RADA, is also a part of the leadership of the All Island Cane Growers Association, which also has lease agreements with Sugar Company of Jamaica in a similar fashion to what is happening at Holland.
Could you hold on? What's that, PS? I'm not following that.
What I understand is from members' query is that he would like to have representative from All Cane also, but he's understanding that the chairman of the RADA board is also a senior representative within the All Cane group. I think he's a secretary. The chairman for All Cane is Ambassador Derek Heaven.
Yeah.
But the chairman for RADA is the secretary, I think, the company secretary manager for All Cane.
Right. All Cane is a what?
The All Island Cane Growers Association.
Okay.
Right.
It's an association. It's an association that represents cane farmers' interests.
Yeah. But what is happening, Chair, to my understanding, is that they are also, because of what is happening to cane lands, in the sense that there are not much cane on lands owned by SCJ, that they are leasing the lands and leasing it back to farmers. So a similar arrangement that is happening at Holland is happening with other lands in St. Thomas and Trelawney. So hence why, just to get...
Yeah, you could, and just furnish us with some sort of report so that we have some basis
Exactly.
for discussion.
From SCJ on the
'Cause
arrangements with each
this.
of the entities that they are leasing out lands to in a similar fashion.
Well, if we can construct the request, we just.
Yes.
My understanding is
Yes.
that you need a report. You would need a report on all lands that have been leased by SCJH to All Cane.
All Cane and their agreement with Holland. And if there are any other
Clarity on the agreement with Holland.
Right, and any other entity of such that they are
Of
leasing
similar nature that they may be in
leasing.
engagement
Right.
with. Okay.
Yeah. Good.
Clear.
Members, I must tell you, this is the shortest meeting we've ever had with this ministry, especially RADA. Mr. Thompson, you must be very disappointed that that we have not, But thank you all for what? Thank you all for coming, and let us see if we can look into these issues at more detail at the meeting next week. Thank you, members. If there are no other issues, thank you, and thank you to the staff and to the Ministry of Finance for
Thank you very much,
suffering
Mr.
through the entire
Chair.
meeting. Yes. Okay, meeting adjourned. If what? No, you have caused me to miss mine. And I have a 2:30 meeting. Because I'm still here. No, but...
It's Wednesday, July 15. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Carol Francis. Entertainment, culture, the creative industries, including sports, contributes approximately $195 billion to the Jamaican economy each year. It also employs 76,000 people. The COVID-19 pandemic directly and indirectly impacted their livelihoods due to the postponement or cancellation of a number of events. The Ministry of Culture, Gender, Entertainment and Sports has developed a number of proposals and implemented a number of initiatives to gradually reopen the sector and put the industries on the road to recovery. Marlon Samuels has more in this report.
The outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic has been choking the lifeline out of a number of industries, including culture, entertainment, and sports. It resulted in multiple local and national events being postponed or simply cancelled.
The data, Mr. Speaker, shows that between March and June 2020, more than 10,000 community bars were closed. 560 round robins were not held. Usually there are at least 60 per week. The festivals and events economy, including such activities as Calabash Literary Festival, Caribbean Fashion Week, Style Week, and over 7,200 events that would have been held in towns and communities across Jamaica were all shuttered. Also losing out have been our elite sportsmen and sportswomen. One athlete, Mr. Speaker, reported losing 14 million Jamaican dollars since March. We estimate that as much as 26 billion Jamaican dollars has been lost, and more than 40,000 creative and sports-related jobs have been affected since COVID.
Ms. Grange says much needed support is being given to athletes and members of the creative industries.
Through the National Registry of Entertainment and Creative Industries practitioners in my ministry, we have been supporting applications for relief through the CARE program. We have been using the e-registry, Mr. Speaker, to validate that, say, Tom Strokes, who says he's an entertainer or an entertainment practitioner, is indeed a member of the industry and his application should be considered. I use this opportunity to encourage entertainment and creative industry practitioners to sign up to the registry. Individual registration since March has increased by more than 1,000 over the similar period last year, and company registrations have increased by 87%. Learning from the experience with creative industries practitioners, we're also moving to an athletes management system and registry to give support to athletes as they emerge from COVID-19. The athletes management system and registry will assist in the development of policy and programs and will help to calculate the contribution of sport to national development. I appeal to athletes, coaches, and other stakeholders in the sports sector to sign up to the registry. We have already received names and TRN of all the players in the Premier League clubs.
The 40 million is in addition to the amount to be paid under the CARE program. For the news on PBCJ, I'm Marlon Samuels.
In the meantime, Minister of Local Government and Community Development Desmond McKenzie has outlined a range of protocols for the phased reopening of the entertainment industry. Simone Absalom has the details in this report.
The local government minister says nightclub operations are still a no-go, but events like festivals and tent meetings can be held for the next 2 weeks.
And these events would include concerts, parties, round robin, launches, religious celebration, and the religious celebration mean baptism.
The move follows a meeting between Minister McKenzie and representatives of the entertainment industry. When making his statement in Parliament, the minister said social distancing and wearing masks is a given at all events.
Arising out of the meeting, the event must come to an end 1 hour before the start of the nightly curfew. Well, the curfew is at 11, so 10. No more than 280 people can gather for any one event. 280. 50 patrons and the other 30 represents the promoters, the musicians, etc. 280. Again. Yes. So 250 patrons and 30 additional production personnel, including performers and staff. There must be signs such as tape on the floors or other markings to ensure that the people attending observe the necessary protocols. The bar area is only to be used for purchasing of drinks. No gathering is allowed. A point that is critical when we speak about the round robin. Obstruction of vehicular traffic and access to public thoroughfare will not be allowed.
He said all entertainment events are subject to inspection from relevant authorities.
There will be a sensitization and monitoring team comprising the Social Development Commission, the Ministry of Tourism, the Ministry of Health, as we take a joined-up government approach, which will see, Mr. Speaker, the employment of over 1,000 young people across the country to ensure the effectiveness of this exercise. 350 will come from the Ministry of Local Government Youth Summer Employment Program, and the remaining portion will come from the Ministry of Tourism and the Ministry of Health and Wellness, and a period of training would have already commenced, Mr. Speaker, as we seek to put in place the necessary mechanism to monitor, to ensure that we get as much compliance as possible with the latest rounds of orders that we are putting out.
Mr. Mackenzie also announced that sports bars will be allowed to reopen.
But all of these facilities must first obtain the requisite approval license from the local authorities and the necessary certification of safety from the Jamaica Fire Brigade in order for these establishments to be reopened.
Amusement parks and water attractions have also been given the green light, but
again, the same will follow. Commencing on the 21st, they will be allowed to operate between the hours of 10 a.m. and 6 p.m. These facilities including gaming arcades for young children and young adults. And I want to make the point that these gaming lounges must not be confused with the ones where they go to gamble.
he warned that this 2-week relaxation of the lockdown on the entertainment sector must not be abused. Simone Absalom for the news on PBCJ.
Jamaica has recorded 3 new COVID-19 cases and 15 more recoveries in the last 24 hours. This brings to 762 the total number of positives and to 643 the number of recoveries. The newly confirmed cases are all imported and are comprised of 2 females and a male. Their ages range from 27 to 55 years. 2 of the cases are tourists who stayed in St. James and a Jamaican who stayed in Kingston and St. Andrew have repatriated. The 3rd individual is a Jamaican resident. Currently, there are 244 imported cases, 236 cases that are contacts of confirmed cases, 39 local transmission cases not epidemiologically linked, 236 related to the workplace cluster in St. Catherine, and 7 under investigation. Approximately $60 million has been raised from the Telethon Jamaica Together We Stand event held in April towards procuring personal protective equipment for frontline workers to fight COVID-19.
Mr. Speaker, we have collected the majority of the money that was pledged during the broadcast on air and online and forwarded to the account of the National Health Fund, which has been procuring PPE for frontline workers in the battle against COVID-19.
The Bustamante Hospital for Children now has 4 additional maternal neonatal high dependency units, HDU. The €22 million HDUs were handed over on Tuesday and is funded by the European Union. The units creates 10 specialized bed spaces that will improve the institution's capacity to treat sick children.
We can all appreciate the worry and stress that parents and the entire family experience when a child is very sick. We hope that this unit will offer some comfort to the families of those who will require the services offered here, for it is well equipped and the staff are highly trained. And I'm particularly proud because the top quality equipment comes from many European countries, and it is really the best that Europe has to offer today.
This facility, it adds to a number of other things that we're going to be doing at the Bustamante Hospital for children, and it adds significantly to a series of other things that are going to be done for pediatric and adolescent care, and indeed for mothers, for maternal care also. And that again is something that, as a member of the administration, I'm very proud of, coming to the end of a tenure in our very vibrant and healthy democracy. This country, Jamaica, has seen a plan for pediatric and adolescent care, maternal care, that encompasses not just this institution, but other institutions. As you know, and again in keeping with the strong partnership, we're constructing a brand new hospital in St. James at the Cornwall Regional Hospital compound. This is a 220-bed facility, which will be both pediatric and adolescent care. And that is a work in progress. It's under construction as we speak. And that is going to add significant additional capacity, certainly on that side of the country, Western Jamaica, which will ease some of the pressure of Bustamante Hospital for Children in terms of the required specialist care that is required.
Other HDUs have already been established at the Spanish Town, Victoria Jubilee, and the St. Anne's Bay hospitals. The dependency units are among the deliverables under the Program for the Reduction of Maternal and Child Mortality, PROMAC. It seeks to improve child mortality and reduce maternal mortality. Leader of Government Business in the House, Carl Samuda, has tabled a motion on behalf of Prime Minister Andrew Holness during Tuesday's sitting of Parliament that has sparked speculation.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Prime Minister, I beg to give notice that at the next meeting of the House, he will move to introduce and have for the first time a bill shortly entitled The Representation of the People's Amendment Act 2020.
Reports are rife that the amendment will allow for local government and general elections to be held at the same time. There has been debate on the feasibility of holding both elections together, especially when their due dates fall within a close range. And time now for the latest business and share market news from business reporter Gabrielle Thompson in today's Business Report.
In Tuesday's trading session, the JSE Combined Index declined by 3,306 points to close at under 400,000 units. Overall market activity resulted from trading in 82 stocks, of which 29 advanced, 40 declined, and 13 traded firm. The Junior Market Index declined by 33 points to close at under 3,000 units. Stocks advanced for 138 Student Living Jamaica, Access Financial Services, and CAC 2000 Limited. Stocks declined for 1834 Investments, Burrito Investments Limited, and Blue Power Group Limited. Trading firm were AMG Packaging and Paper Company, Caribbean Cream Limited, and Caribbean Flavors and Fragrances Limited. Wigton Wind Farm Limited ordinary shares was the volume leader with 21.9 million units, followed by Grace Kennedy Limited with 2.7 million units and Mailpack Group Limited with 2.2 million units. Now for the foreign exchange. The US dollar on Tuesday, July 14, ended trading at $144.04. The Canadian dollar sold for an average $106.36. The pound sterling traded for $183.20, and the euro ended trading at $163.55. Oil prices rose on Wednesday after a sharp drop in U.S. crude inventories, with the market waiting for OPEC and its allies to decide on the easing of output curbs later in the day as the global economy slowly recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. Brent crude futures were up 35 cents to $43.25 a barrel. West Texas Intermediate crude futures rose 38 cents to $40.67 a barrel. And that's it for the Business Report on PBCJ. I'm Gabrielle Thompson.
The human papillomavirus HPV causes cervical cancer, according to the World Health Organization, and is the fourth most common cancer in women. Obstetrician and gynecologist Dr. Rishi Chand tells us more about it and how it can be treated in this Living Healthy report with Simone Absalom.
Dr. Chand, thanks so much for agreeing to speak with us.
Thank you.
All right, so how does cervical cancer occur or happen?
Okay. It usually happens after exposure to a virus called human papillomavirus, or HPV for short. These cells in sexually active individuals, and it does not mean penetrative intercourse only. It could be genital to genital, it could be oral to genital, or it could be hand to genital. Irrespective of the way it's crossed, HPV is the culprit. There are many different forms of HPV, close to 200 different types, of which certain amount of them are oncogenic or cancer causing. So these HPV viruses attack a specific area of the cervix where there's lots of mitotic, lots of cell division going on. So that area is vulnerable. Once it affects those cells, it can cause changes in those cells, which can go from precancerous to cancerous. So in doing a pap smear, an individual is able to pick up these changes well in advance of it becoming cancerous. So that's the whole point of doing the pap smear, when you can pick up the problem before it becomes advanced, and so you can treat it adequately.
Cervical cancer typically doesn't cause noticeable symptoms in the early stages. Because of this, it is recommended that women get a pap smear test done to detect abnormal cells in your cervix. If left untreated, those abnormal cells could develop into cancer.
It's one of the top 3 leading cancers causing mortality.
Are there any symptoms that you can see to show whether or not you should be tested or that you do have it?
Once the cervix becomes diseased, it may start to produce more of a discharge. Okay, and this discharge is usually very foul smelling. Also during intercourse, one may see blood. Because the cervix is so inflamed, during intercourse it's traumatized and you might see blood. In late stage cancers, it can actually spread into the vagina itself, from the cervix into the vagina. And even later stages, it can go into the bladder, in which cases you might see blood in the urine, or it might even go into the rectum. Right? So it can spread depending on the stage. So the symptoms depend on the stage. Now, patients might have a discharge and they go to the doctor, and sometimes they're prescribed medication without that doctor looking at the cervix, which is bad practice, but it's very common. Patients complain of a symptom and they're given a prescription without adequate examination, and that's a missed opportunity to look and see if something is wrong with the cervix. If a patient keeps getting treated for vaginal infections and they notice despite all the treatments it's not working well, it might well be worth investigating the cervix, because the problem might be coming from there.
Are there any other activities that we can do that can help to prevent cervical cancer? You mentioned abstinence, HPV. I hear persons talking about eating healthy and staying active that can reduce your chances. Is that so?
Well, a good immune system, one would, like I said earlier, most people clear the HPV virus, most people. And that would entail having a good immune system. So once you're in good health, good dietary practice, exercise, once you're in good health, your immune system should be in good working order to clear. It's just a few patients, for whatever reason, who are vulnerable. And those are the ones we're trying to target, or we're trying to pick up when we do our pap smears.
In regional news, there were sighs of relief from students in Barbados after completing the common entrance exam. Over 3,500 students took the test that determines their entrance to secondary school. We have more in this Barbados Today report.
Acting Chief Education Officer Joy Adamson said health protocols were in place, including temperature checks, the sanitizing of hands, and physical distancing. She noted a few students became ill, but they were given extra time to complete the test, and those who couldn't will be given an alternative date. The examination wrapped up about 1 p.m. and students shared their experiences with our news team.
Today's examination, it was good, but the math was a little bit hard. But I still got it done.
Okay, and how are you feeling now?
I'm feeling happy that it's over with.
Right, and what are you hoping for?
I'm hoping that to get my choice of my school.
What's that choice?
St. Leonard's.
I feel pretty good. I'm glad it's over because it was real much pressure on us because we had to push really hard, and I think we deserve all of this because we come really far and we teacher push us and we teacher get some of the credit too.
I feel glad because I had get a little bit time to rest because I worked so hard to pass for my school pass for Springer. My mommy want me to go to Springer.
The exam was pretty easy. Especially, I thought it was going to be hard, but it was pretty easy actually.
So you read carefully and you answered all of your questions?
Yes, I read very carefully and I actually managed to answer all my questions.
Something?
Yes, please.
Okay, what school are you hoping to pass?
I am hoping to pass for a Combamere.
It was scared, but I do what I had to do. I get out of the room as quick as possible, and that was it.
You get out as quick as possible. So, did you read all the questions carefully and answer them carefully?
Yes, please.
Okay, I hope so. What school are you hoping to go to?
Dayton Griffith.
Dayton. How was the math in the unit?
Well, the math was kind of hard, but I got through with the English.
The Trinidad and Tobago government has delivered to that country its very first agro-processing park at a cost of $19 million. The agro-processing park was officially opened in the village of Maruga. Karen Cozier-Phillips attended the opening ceremony and filed this report.
Dr. Keith Rowley officially opened the Maruga Agro-Processing Park at Saunders Trace on Tuesday. The Prime Minister recalled that in 2015 he made a promise to constituents of Maruga Tableland. He said his vision was to bring change and opportunity, as there is tremendous potential in the area. The Prime Minister said that the government has provided the infrastructure, and now he's inviting farmers and entrepreneurs to come and stay in the business. He described the Maruga Agro-Processing Park as an investment opportunity to participate in national production. The Prime Minister said the government realized that it is important that the nation be fed, and that's why the government has made agriculture a lucrative business. He said any investment made by farmers, their profits are tax-free. The Prime Minister identified two industries that can benefit from the Maruga Agro-Processing Park: the cocoa industry and the pineapple industry. He said cocoa has a future, and cocoa farmers can now look to production and invest in new cocoa species. He said pineapple farmers can also contribute to reducing the food import bill.
Here in Trinidad and Tobago, some of the best pineapples are grown in this country. So then, why are we importing pineapple if we have the potential to grow and to supply to those pizza toppings? This is what? This factual means.
The Maruga Agro-Processing Park was built at a cost of $90 million. Karen Cozier-Phillip, TTT News.
Still in Trinidad and Tobago, small contractors are calling on the government for jobs and money they lost when the company they had been subcontracted to was terminated from the Point 14 Highway project. Ian Watson has the details in this report.
These small contractors say they were subcontracted by Brazilian firm OES Construtora to work on the Point 14 Highway when the firm was the main contractor. But they say since OES was fired from the project and made to repay the government, local small contractors were also left without work. According to spokesman Alistair Ramarak, some of these contractors have been compromised.
There are also some contractors that have millions of dollars in materials that is to be used in the highway.
Mr. Ramarak says each time they have dialogue with the National Infrastructure Development Company Limited, they are being told that NIDCO has to speak with the minister.
I know today you could communicate to people in Mars and in the moon, but unfortunately NIDCO can't communicate, they can't get an answer from the Minister of Works.
He is asking why OAS workers were not paid with the money the government recovered from OAS.
If this government was people-oriented, this government received $900 million from the OAS bond. They say that, not me. Why it is the government didn't take $18 million of that and pay out the poor OAS workers that they still owing?
As to the timing of their protest, he is adamant it's not political, stressing they have tried talking to NIDCO in the past to come to a resolution.
Every time we come out to the media and we go to set up here, it's because they would have called us to have a meeting. Just like this morning. So they call us first thing this morning.
So they call you to a meeting again this morning?
Yeah, and we say no, this time we're going to make sure that the media hear our cry.
When TTT News contacted Minister of Works, Ruhan Sinanan, he told us that the payment of the OAS workers is the responsibility of OAS, but the government paid them in good faith. In December 2016, the government met with the Oilfields Workers Trade Union, and the workers were in fact paid. Minister Sinanan also said the government cannot force the local contractors who are now spearheading the project and are already using local contractors to subcontract the work. Ian Wason, TTT News.
In sports, Minister of Sports Olivia Grange has reiterated the protocols for the resumption of sporting activities in Jamaica.
We have been in discussion with our stakeholders, the Ministry of Health and Wellness, as well as the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development, as we regroup and re-engineer for a phased reopening of the sectors. So far, government has approved protocols for national track and field athletes to resume training at Independence Park, no spectators.
And that's our package. Join us again tomorrow, same time, same place, for more news and sports right here on PBCJ, the People's Station.